So we ended our episode, and it's very, very long. However, we realized during the middle of the episode, the victim's name in this whole book is Daniel. And we interchanged the name David and Daniel multiple times. We are very sorry, but whenever you hear the word David, we meant Daniel.
Yes, except for when we met David, which may have been never.
I don't think we ever needed to say the name David. So
maybe not.
So the victim's name is Daniel in the book.
Hello and welcome to Metal Vice, a podcast where we talk about all things music.
Well, the things we care about.
That's right, which is mainly metal music and live music. I'm your host, Brian, joining with the other host,
Karen.
And this is about music in a roundabout way, or no,
yeah, kind of.
Definitely about music for sure.
Yeah.
It's actually about Randy Blythe and his book. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're noticing I'm wearing the Headbangers Battle Vest that I made. Which typically means that I wear this only when we go to a show for one of the bands on the back or talk about one of the shows for the podcast. I'm wearing this because I learned about Randy's first book on the first Headbangers boat, and which is sort of what led me to go down the path of buying the book and reading it. And we've been talking about doing a book club episode for a long time.
We have a lot. Well, most of them are on Audible, but we have some physical copies as well of metal themed books
or by metal artists or whatnot. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
So we've always wanted to do a book club episode. So this is our first book club episode doing Randy's Dark Days.
So this is about his first book that he wrote in 2015 called Dark Days. Cause he does have another book that just came out, actually just released this month in February of 2025.
Which is when we're recording this. Yeah.
When we're recording this, that is Just Beyond the Light.
Just Beyond. So, okay. Yeah. That's the second book, which is another nonfiction. This is a memoir as well.
Yep.
It's a memoir. Yeah, nonfiction. I always have to take a second to remember fiction versus nonfiction.
Not false is how I always remember.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, nonfiction, not false.
Which is funny because on the boat he talks about, and even in this book, he talks about writing a fiction book.
Oh yeah.
And really wants to write
and everything. Yeah.
And on the boat this last year, we went to his Q&A or his conversation, and he's like, I really, really want to do a fiction book, but my publisher and my editor and my agent are always like, yeah, they're not going to do it. And the thing is, you have to write the manuscript ahead of time. And that's what I know about writing as well, is you have to write the entire story ahead of time. And then you send it out to publishers and be like, who wants to publish this?
And hopefully somebody picks it up. And
it is like a 90 to 95% fail rate on that.
Yeah.
And Randy, it sounds like, is like, I don't want to do that if it's going to fail. I want to just do it.
Yeah, he just wants to do it.
And his agent was basically saying, like, if you write another nonfiction book that shows that you're a bestseller, that adds more weight to just be like, walk into a room and be like, I want to write a book. Here's the story. Do you want to buy the story and just let me write it type thing?
Yeah.
So hopefully his next book does well. So I don't give a shit really about all the nonfiction stuff. I want to see his stories, honestly, more than I care about this stuff. But this was very interesting. Dark Days. This was about his time in prison.
Yes. Yep. In 2014, he went to prison?
I think before that, 2012, 2011.
No. Oh, yeah. 2012 was when he went to prison.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so 2012. He wrote it in 2014. It came out in 2015.
Yes. Sorry. But I guess before diving super far into the book, I want to talk a little bit about, again, finding out about the book and finding out about this.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we were on the boat the first year, and I remember sort of the sail away party, Randy coming out and basically saying something along the lines of like, hey, you're in your community, you're with a bunch of friends, make new friends, talk to people, like just go out, which is definitely not in my comfort zone. Talking to people is not in my comfort zone.
I've gotten better over the years.
Same, for sure.
But yeah, definitely, especially that first year on the boat.
Yeah.
I don't think we talked to very many people. So.
No. One person I did talk to, just walking around, I think in the casino one night after a show, I saw this guy walking around with the S&M2 shirt, this same shirt I'm wearing right now. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take Randy's advice. The thing metalheads do a lot out in public is just, hey, nice shirt. And it happens to me all the time. I say it to people all the time and just sort of like, no, thank you. And, just kind of pass on. And I was like, I'm going to try that out. Hey, nice shirt. Oh, thank you. And then it's like, but I'm going to try to like continue this conversation along a little bit, not just nice shirt. were you at the show? Turns out he was at the second night just like us. And I was like, oh shit, so were we. That was an awesome show. It was so fucking good. It was so great, right? And he's like, the guy I'm talking to is like, yeah, I don't remember. I got way too fucking drunk and I blacked out way early. I don't remember shit from that night. I woke up the next morning and I'm remembering this conversation from multiple years ago. And basically like my wife gave me an ultimatum, stop drinking, go to rehab, or we're done type thing, which I was like, holy shit, James did the same thing. Like after that show, he went to rehab. And he's like, yeah, like that's kind of why I'm on this boat. Like reading Randy's book and talking about his sobriety, like was a really big encouragement for me to reach out and like undergo sobriety as well. And I was like, hold on. Randy's sober and Randy has a book. Like those were the two takeaways I had from that conversation outside of like meeting this guy and like finding out he was a super cool dude. But like, I didn't know Randy had a book. I didn't know he was sober. And I was like, I need to find this book. And he's like, yeah, it's all about his time in prison when he was arrested. And I was like, I know a little bit about that story. I need to get this book and read this. And so that's sort of what drove me down to getting this book and reading it. And when I got this, I went to Randy's social media page, Instagram or something, to try to find like where to buy it, where like the best place to buy this book. He didn't really have a link to like his website because I wanted to buy it from his website or something like that, right? Yeah. To support him and whatnot. And I couldn't find anything. So I went through his Instagram, found a post a few years ago where he was at a bookstore in Richmond doing a signing. And they had sort of like their @ tagged on that post or something. So then I went to that bookstore's Instagram page, found their website, and bought the book directly from them. And they shipped it out, super quick shipping and all that normal shit, right? But it was kind of cool because when we got it, it was actually a signed copy by Randy. Yep. Which was really cool.
So if you're on YouTube, we have the signed copy.
Maybe throw a photo of that up or something. Yeah. But yeah, that's sort of how we found out about the book and why we got it and why we started reading it for sure. I'm also in a book club, and so this was my selection for that book club. So I made 6 other guys buy the book and read the book as well.
And ironically, that's not a sober book club because you guys drink a bottle of bourbon or whiskey.
That is part of the rules of it. You can't be done with the book club until the bottle of bourbon is gone. I've joined late, and apparently early in the days they've struggled with that. And I'm like, really? There's 7 of you guys with 1 bottle. Like this seems easy, but apparently they're not big drinkers like me, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, I don't know.
So how do you want to go about this?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking about this. I don't want to like break it down chapter by chapter, like key things.
Yeah, so up until chapter 11, I took notes chapter by chapter and like a lot of notes, kind of like summarizing everything that he said, what happened during that chapter, all that stuff. And then we kind of talked about of not doing a chapter by chapter because it's not like it's like a book club. It's just more of like a review.
Yeah.
Like our thoughts on the book and high synopsis of what the book is.
Yeah, and if you haven't read the book, I guess there's going to be spoilers here. We're going to go over details of the book. Highly encourage people to read the book. Just go out there and buy it. And if you haven't read it, maybe go out and buy the book and then read it. And then come back and check this out if you're at all interested. But definitely read the book at least. I found the book very enjoyable and very entertaining. And learned a lot about Randy and Lamb of God in this book.
Yeah, me too. I think that was something that kind of kept me going with the story, I guess. Because there's, so like Brian said, spoilers, but there are some chapters that are very drawn out because it is just him in prison day to day. Like, what was he there for, like 30 some days or something?
I want to say like 36, 38 days. Yeah. And I guess also it's been almost a year since we've read this book. So it has
been a year now because I finished reading it when I came home from Ireland and that was a year ago.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I read it while going to Spain in July.
Okay.
That's when I started.
Okay. Yeah. So now we sound like we're world travelers. But, anyways, but yeah, there are some really dry chapters where it is just a mundane prison life of like get up, go to the shower, go to the rec yard. What they call it,
the yard. Yeah, the yard. Which was just like a small area where multiple cells were all released into one area.
Yeah, like it seems like in my mind, granted we don't have pictures or anything, but in my mind it's just a larger caged area that they were
Yes.
able to go to. It wasn't like what you see in movies where it's like basketball courts and like
No,
a whole
not
bunch
this
of
one.
stuff.
Because so that's the other thing. He was not in general population during this time.
Yeah.
Outside of the last like 3 days, I want to say.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
At the last 3 days, he was moved from solitary to general pop. And solitary's loose.
Yeah,
He had a
'cause
cellmate,
He had cellies, yeah.
George, Dojr.
DJOR.
George, yeah.
Yeah.
Who was a Mongolian.
Oh, we should have wore the free George.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Shirt.
Jumping all over the place. When I had this for book club, one of the guys went to Riot Fest in book club this year, which Lamb of God was there, and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna make a free George shirt, and wear that during.
You keep saying George.
That's how I
think it's
pronounce it.
Jor.
I don't know. I pronounce it George. George.
Well, the J's at the beginning though. It's DJOR.
I think it's Dojr.
No, it's DJOR.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay, you're right. DORJ.
Dorj. I couldn't remember. It's Dorj.
Dorj.
Dorj. Again, we could be pronouncing that completely wrong.
Yeah.
I don't remember what we were talking about, but so he made a shirt, and I had to make one for me, the free Dorj shirt. He wore that to Riot Fest this last year. Apparently, somebody stopped him and knew what it was and did a selfie with him.
Awesome.
That is the shirt I wore for the last Lamb of God boat photo op we had on the boat.
Oh, right.
So,
I wore Joey and you wore.
It's very, like, the vest covers up most of it, but maybe we'll throw a photo of that up as well. But I did wear that
When you
during
walked
that.
in for the photo, you should have like opened your vest.
I should have,
you're
yeah.
like, Randy.
But Randy was in prison for murdering, a first-degree murder, I think it was.
I thought it was manslaughter.
Manslaughter, all right.
Yeah,
manslaughter. I don't know the different degrees and whatnot. He was in there for manslaughter. George apparently was in there for loving vodka, is all I remember.
Yeah.
I don't know what he did to go into prison and Czech prison, but apparently he loved vodka. What was the saying, like Povo vodka or something like that?
Yeah, like live vodka or like to live for vodka.
Yeah, like
basically.
he's a big vodka fan, basically.
Yeah.
And he was a pretty stout guy from Randy's description of him.
Like kind of a gross stout guy. And this is the thing, like we don't have pictures or anything like that. So it's like, and that's what I love about books sometimes is like you can kind of make up the story in your head of what things look like. So I'm just like thinking of like a stout, big Mongolian guy, and big by like round, Mongolian guy that's like kind of not as clean as somebody else. So,
and I guess that's a good point, because when also, like, you know, you picture in your head and how Randy depicted this sort of prison, Podok prison in Czech Republic, I think is the name of it.
I think so. Podok.
Yeah.
And I could be saying that wrong as well. I forgot that before we recorded this, I wanted to look at, see how it's pronounced. But
so all right, we're jumping all over the place here.
Yeah.
Taking a step back before getting into the book, did you know Randy was in prison?
I remember hearing something about it, but I didn't know hardly anything about it. Like I feel like it was 2019-ish maybe that you had brought it up, and I'm like, what? He went to prison? But also during this time period, which would have been 2012 that he went to prison. 2010 is when it happened. 2012 is when he found out that he was being charged for this, which we should go into that story as well. But I didn't know anything about it, but also I don't think I listened to Lamb of God. I mean, you listened to it like in 2004 to 2010-ish.
Yeah, I was a big fan of them before my first GA show, which was Slipknot, Lamb of God, Shadows Fall. And like that first GA show definitely had a huge impact on my life in terms of live music. And I was a fan of Lamb of God going into it, and that show in general. Like I liked all three of those bands. So I was like, holy fuck, this is a perfect set for me.
Yeah.
Perfect lineup. And so I was a fan of them way back then. And roughly 2010 or so after undergrad, I kind of fell out of metal.
Yeah.
And falling out's a wrong way. It just didn't become my primary music I listened to.
Right. And I just didn't listen to any music. So that's when I went into like podcasts.
Yeah.
And I used to listen to podcasts all day long. That's all I would listen to.
So I was exploring more like indie rock, folk music, a little bit of pop, a little bit of rap as well. So like my music taste sort of diverged into that until the mid 20-teens and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
When we went to open air. And that's when it came back in a hard way. Like, holy fuck, I have missed metal music for so long. Fucking give me this metal shit.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember. I mean, I guess I remember you having like a Lamb of God shirt, and like you always wore it when you were around my family because
I wanted to piss them off.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So other than that, like I didn't really. I mean, I'm sure I heard Lamb of God because I'm sure you listened to it like in the car or in your room or whatever. And I'm saying your room like when you lived with your dad because we lived together from most of that time.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, but anyways, but I didn't know. No, to answer your question, no, I didn't know he went to prison before I read it. Yes, but it was like very briefly. Like it was. I think I remember us looking when you told me about it. I looked up an article about it.
Okay.
And then that was all I knew.
I remember the announcement coming out that he was arrested and went to prison. And I thought the time that he was in prison was multiple years, honestly. I couldn't remember. I knew he went to prison. I knew he was out of prison. The song 512 refers to this jail cell he was in. Yep. And whenever he plays it live, he comes out with the intro of like, this song's about a gated community I was in Eastern Europe type thing, right? Which always made me smile because like, oh, I know what you're referring to. But I didn't know how long he was in prison or anything like that. I thought I kind of remembered the story of Lamb of God's going on tour with a new singer.
Oh.
So Redneck comes out, like the music video where like the touring bus comes in. The first time I saw that, I was like, that's not Randy. Randy has dreadlocks and this guy's got a shaved head. Like this must be that one album that new singer came out because the band was like, we got to keep touring type thing. Not realizing it was only 30 some odd days, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I do remember now when we talked about Randy going to prison was we started looking up Rammstein getting charged in Utah, Behemoth being charged in Poland and then Randy. And that's where that all came together. So it wasn't like we were talking about Lamb of God in particular. We were talking about like people being...
Oh, I kind of remember that conversation because then I was like, oh, Randy was arrested. Yeah. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how that all came.
I do remember that because that spin off from that Rammstein documentary when they were in Utah.
Yes, yep.
And Book Dish, I think, is what it was.
Yep. And they got charged with indecency.
Indecency, and then I was like, oh well, Behemoth also for blasphemy.
Yeah.
And then of course Randy for killing a motherfucker.
Yeah. And then that's where the Googling started, and I was like, and that's where I found the article of him going to prison and all that stuff. So. And
I also didn't know much about that. I didn't know it was at a show. I didn't know like the details around it. All I knew was that Randy was charged with murder, and I was like, okay. And like again, I wasn't necessarily into metal as much, and I'm also not into like following news stories that much, right? So I was like,
when's the last time you watched the news?
Yeah, exactly. So like, I kind of wish I would have followed this closer back then.
Yeah, me too. Because I think reading it would have a different aspect of it. Of like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. Oh yeah, and like even spoiler. Well, is it in the book? It might not be in the book, but it's on the As the Palace Burns, the reunion show when he gets out of prison when he gets out of spending time in prison, but before the trial.
Yep.
So it was actually in Council Bluffs, Iowa.
The Knotfest, Iowa show.
And we lived in Iowa at the time, and I remember when that happened, I was like, wait, did you even know about that? Like, why did we not go? One, we probably didn't have money
for sure.
We did find out. I mean, we probably did know about it, but like Brian said, he wasn't really listening to metal, and at that time, we definitely didn't have money to even drive across the state to Council Bluffs. So
yeah, but I guess that's another good point. The movie, the As the Palace Burns movie, is referenced in the book quite heavily because during the time when they were touring, when he gets arrested, they were filming a movie for that.
It was for the fans.
Yeah, it was all about the fans in different geographic locations finding a community in metal, basically.
Yep.
And finding Lamb of God and finding each other and blah, blah, all that shit, right? And the movie sort of took a turn once Randy got arrested, and that became the dominant story of the movie. We can talk about that maybe in a different episode.
Yeah, we'll do a whole episode, I think, on
because I don't think that movie works out that well. I wish they would have stuck with one theme or the other.
Yeah.
Because once it does that hard transition, it's like it's a completely different story you're telling.
It is. They should have.
Yeah.
I understand they probably had the documentary crew for like a certain amount of time, and it's also like, oh, now this is happening. But I do think that they bring it back with the whole Knotfest Iowa show and like the community around Randy and all that, that whole part. So I could see how they tied it together, but it does take a big focus of the documentary.
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna say documentary more than a movie.
For sure. Yeah. More of a documentary style movie type thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were recording that and they were on tour in Europe doing the festival circuit and then supporting that with additional shows around as well. Yeah. A lot of bands do this. You'll see this, a festival gets announced with all of these bands. It looks super fucking cool. If you're not like the tippity fucking top of this, there's a good chance one of those lower bands is going to be doing a smaller tour around the festival.
We look for that now because like we'll see like if there's a band from Sweden or an international band or like a band that's not really touring is announcing something, more than likely they have a tour happening as well. So for example, we knew Arch Enemy was coming to Milwaukee Metal Fest, and in my mind I was like, oh, they're probably doing a tour. Sure enough, they are doing a small tour around it. So because if they're going to come all the way to the US, unless they are one of the top bands, more than likely they're not just coming for that one festival.
Exactly, right.
So Europe is kind of the same way, where they do have their festivals on the weekends, but then they try to fill in shows along the way as well. So,
and that's exactly what this was. In between festival dates, they flew to the Czech Republic, they being Lamb of God, flew to the Czech Republic for a small gig. It was their first show in the Czech Republic.
Since that show where
the
kid died.
I guess I'm getting these conflated. Right, exactly. Yeah. That the show where David, the guy who died during this, that was their first show. This was their first show back, and that was during the festival circuit.
Yep.
And it's when they were unloading, like they were deboarding the plane, and there's like a bunch of fucking armed guards, like military SWAT type guards.
Yep.
And he even calls it out. Like other people in the band were like,
"Holy shit, who's on this plane?
Who the fuck is on this plane?" And Randy gets off, and they detain the entire band. And sequester them. And they're like, fuck. And Randy even called in the book. He's like, what member of our fucking crew brought weed again? It's like, he doesn't apparently smoke weed. He doesn't like it, which I get that. I'm not a big weed smoker either. I always thought he was for some reason. But he's like, I don't like that shit. But he's like, so it's not me, but I know our crew and other people in our crew really do indulge in like this shit. And sometimes somebody's fucking dumb enough to bring it into another country.
Yep. And that's actually how the book starts, I believe, is that first chapter is about them flying to the Czech Republic.
Yeah, I can't remember what chapter, but it's early on,
Yeah, I believe it's that first chapter of like kind of setting the scene of why he's writing the book. So, sorry, I keep touching the book. Maybe we should move it because I feel like I'm like...
No, I like it where it is. It's fine. You can touch
prop.
it.
It's my prop.
Yeah.
You can't even see it on the camera.
No.
I'm like constantly touching it. So, but... if I remember right, that's how it kind of starts, is like setting the scene of why he's even writing it. And it is about like them getting ready to get off the plane and like everybody, like all the guards, and they get taken to a room and questioned.
And they even don't know what's going on then either, right? Like it takes a while for it to set in.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the rest of the band knows. I think Randy gets separated from them.
Yeah, I can't remember that. Again, it's been a while since we've read it. I can't remember exactly all the details.
Yeah. And he's being shown like this paper saying like, they pretty much, it was translated to murder. When he goes to trial, then you kind of learn that it's manslaughter.
Okay.
Yeah. So, or maybe when he talks to the lawyers the first time, it's like what you would call in the U.S. a manslaughter charge.
Yeah.
But and then it goes into the show in May of 2010 when David, the kid that died. I keep saying kid. I don't know if he was under 18, but
whatever.
I say everybody's kids.
Yeah. My guess is a kid. Anybody under like the age of 30 is probably a kid in my eyes by this point.
Yeah, but I mean, even going to a show, like I say, oh, there was a kid in the pit or whatever.
Yeah.
Granted, they could have been an adult, and I'm still saying kid.
A fan, David, a fan of Lamb of God.
A fan of the Lamb of God, yeah. But it starts with, so when he talks about that show, it starts with like how shows are kind of put together on a band's perspective and how the crew, so they get to a venue. This one happened to be dumpier than most that they
it was like a very shitty dive bar, and when they were describing it, it reminded me of Cobra Lounge and reminded me of Reggie's.
Reggie's is what my mind kept going to Reggie's
because it was this tiny ass hole in the wall venue.
Yeah.
No security rail. The rail is on the stage, which both of those stages basically have like a gate that's the level of the stage. So there is no, typically when we go to shows, you see like the barrier of gap,
yeah.
where you have your security working, and then you have the stage, which is higher above that.
Yeah.
So like if people go crowd surfing over, the security catches them, and then you run along that little barrier, that trench type thing, out to one of the sides and run all the way to the back of the crowd again.
Yeah. So this wasn't like that at all. So in my mind, it does go to Reggie's, and I think I was reading that part on the plane, and it kept going to Reggie's in my mind.
I think that helps for us.
Yeah.
Like to have a visual, like I know what type of venue he's talking about.
And I'm sure almost every city has a venue like that, where it's just like this divey, kind of grungy like place that has bands come to.
Yeah, but to be fair, the first show I think I saw like that was either Reggie's or Cobra. I don't think I've ever been to a venue like that outside of those two. Like thinking back to Iowa and Valor Ballroom, Valor's not set up that way.
Well, no.
Most venues do have that area where they have that wall set up between them. So for me, that was a novel idea here in Chicago after seeing several shows.
Oh, where like there's no barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never, maybe it was Cobra Lounge with the Poison the Well show of being like, or no, it would have been a Reggie show.
Yeah.
Of being like, there is no barrier.
Yeah.
You are on the fucking stage.
For some reason, I think Bloodywood was the first one that we saw like that.
Yeah, that's another good example. Yeah.
But anyways, it doesn't matter which show, but there has to, there's probably some bar show, bar venue or whatever. Like even thinking in Iowa, like in Cedar Rapids when we saw Thrash the Titans, that show doesn't have it's a bar, so it has a stage, but it doesn't have like a barrier or anything.
That's, to me, I guess that's a little different because that's not like a main stage, like a main touring band, right? Like,
well, yes, it could be. I'm just using that as an example. I'm saying I get what you're saying. Town probably has a venue that could be comparable to this.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying for sure. Like, but yeah, whatever. We don't need to fight about this little tiny detail.
No,
but
we don't.
Whatever.
But anyways, so I believe that day it was raining, if I remember the description right. And Randy goes and like sits in the back of the venue, like by the door, and is smoking a cigarette. And I think he's writing or something.
So yeah, I do remember that, where he's talking about touring life a little bit, and it definitely, I do remember it raining as well. And he's like, I just want to get coffee, I want to have a smoke, and I want to write a little bit, in my journal and whatnot. And then I think it was the drummer or one of the security people, I can't remember. Two people like reached up to him like, hey, we're going to the city center. Do you want to come with us?
Yep.
And they all hop on, and he was basically talking about, when we get in there, there's load in where our crew goes in and they set up our stage for us. And I let them be. That's their fucking job. And I'm not going to go in there and start bugging them. I'm like, you go do your thing, get the stage ready for me to do my thing. We'll hang out after we get our jobs, each of like respectively done. And then he just like walked in like, hey, how's it going, Jeff, or whatever his name was, right? And the guy's like, this place is fucking shitty. And that's like Randy's first intention, like, or like sort of notice like, oh, this is gonna be a fucking shitty show, type thing. But then they go into the city center and explore the city center a little bit of Prague.
Yeah, so after touring in the town, I don't remember what was said about that. Like, I think they did do something like in town.
There's like a festival going on, and then they went to like a castle, I think it was. Oh yeah. And they met two fans who were like, oh shit, we're gonna be at the show tonight.
Yep, I remember.
And just some selfies, and Randy's like, that's cool. I like when fans come up and talk to us, and they say thank you, they say hey, whatever, do a quick selfie, and then they move on their way. Like they don't linger, they don't hang out too long. Like, it's cool if you notice me, it's cool if you say hi, but don't like overextend your welcome type thing.
Not be like, whoa, can we hang out with you all day or whatever?
Yeah, like, where are you going? We're gonna go there too, type thing.
Yeah. So that whole thing happened, and then when they get back to the show, and he talks about the writer aspect of shows and everything, and Lamb of God requires like security to be there, and like
that well-defined barrier
and the barrier and everything like that. So when he got there, I think he even says like there was talks of not doing the show, but then it was like for the fans they wanted to do the show, but there wasn't the security barrier, there wasn't the
security staff. Even there's like one person working security,
one person working,
because he ends up coming back to the trial, and they question him at the trial as well.
But I mean, it's not, I guess, going back to what you were saying, like when I envision a show, it's like you have like 4 guys, well, sometimes only 2, depending on the size of the venue, but like you have some guys in that little area between the stage and stuff, and then you have the people in the back watching there's multiple people. Like, are they all like security? Maybe not, maybe event staff, but there's at least people there. That's
a good point, because even like talking about Reggie's, like the setup of this and whatnot, I do every time we go to Reggie's, I see at least 3 security people working. one by the door up to the backstage, one on each stairs.
Yeah.
Like, and then maybe one roaming the crowd in and out, right? So maybe 4 people. But again, they don't have that barrier. So you know, a different show, House of Blues, for instance, right? You have the 4 people behind that barrier, and then you have 6 people out in the crowd spread about trying to like monitor the crowd as well. This had one person with no physical barrier between the stage and them.
Right. So, and then Randy goes into, sorry, I can't remember how it all happens, but that's not what the whole aspect of this episode is, but goes into how the show was that night.
Yeah.
And remembering that it was a lot of crowd jumping on the stage, a lot of stage diving, people getting in their way, where they were like, you know, touching them or like going in between the guitarists and stuff, you know, like just basically disrupting the show in an aspect that's not conducive to performing. And he remembered like putting one person on the ground and kind of saying like, now you need to stop sort of thing. And like, or like putting his elbow on him or something, like holding him down in some way.
You got him in like a chokehold.
Is that what he did?
So like behind his back with his arm wrapped around his neck and like flexing around his neck to like not choke him out, but like make him know like, I'm fucking serious. You're done.
Yeah.
This particular individual had jumped on the stage multiple times. And you're right. Like according to the book anyway, that they were jumping up, like patting him on the back, like getting in the way of the band. And it was kind of funny because after we read this, I saw a Instagram story with Gate Creeper, who was like, if you're going to jump on the stage, cool, get on the stage, jump off the stage. Don't fucking pat me. Don't ask for a high five. You get on, you stage dive and you just, you do your thing. Also, for you in the crowd, close up that pit because people are jumping in. You need to catch those motherfuckers. Yeah. Like this is what you need to do. You're like, working together type thing.
Yeah, it's like a whole crowd aspect. It's not like they're falling or jumping off the stage, so just let them fall on the ground sort of thing.
Yeah, and stage diving is something I had always known about, honestly. Mm-hmm. I had never seen it done personally, like at a show.
Yeah.
Outside of that first Poison the Well show at Cobra Lounge, where as soon as Poison the Well goes on, I see this guy run down the side of the wall. It's a tiny ass venue, so you have the side of the wall and then steps getting up to the stage, running down that, getting up on those steps onto the stage and just jumping straight into the crowd. And I was like, holy shit. Like that's the first time I ever saw a stage diver before.
You had read this already, right?
No, that was before this.
Oh, okay.
As well.
I feel like I had read this before. Was it? I must have read it.
That was in January of last year. So you may have started reading.
Maybe I started it, yeah.
But I was like, I had never seen a stage diver. I knew they existed. I knew people did this. I thought it was more punk shows and I guess hardcore shows. And Poison the Well is more hardcore than metal for sure. But I was always like, no, you do not get on the fucking stage. Like that is not where you fucking belong. You do not get on stage, period. In the sentence.
I think that's how all the concerts have been for us is like, it's always been that barrier of like, you do not pass that barrier to get on stage. Like if you're crowd surfing or whatever, cool. Walk to the back like immediate or run to the back. Whatever. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like
you don't go crowd surfing and then jump on the stage from there. 2 quick stories real quick. Peoria with Megadeth and Lamb of God, and I think Trivium and In Flames was that show.
Yeah.
And we were off to stage right, like all the way off to the side. And there were 2, like we were basically one person back from the rail. There were these 2 young kids in front of us on the rail. And I remember before Megadeth started, before the curtain dropped, they were like, when it drops, we're getting on that fucking stage. When you get up, you got to get up, just go on that stage. That's what we're going to do. And my head was like, you fucking dumbasses. No, you're not going to do that. And of course they didn't fucking make a move the entire show.
No.
A little bit before that, I want to say up at Summerfest in Milwaukee.
Oh yeah.
It was Disturbed headlining, Lamb of God, and then Chevelle.
Yeah.
And I can't remember at what point during the night. I want to say before Chevelle.
I think it was before Chevelle, yeah.
We were roughly in the same spot, but this time we were on the rail. The stack of subwoofers and amps and whatnot were right in front of us because I remember hearing the
Chevelle
bass.
Was like, you could feel it. It was so awesome.
Yeah. But I remember like the head security guy bringing a new kid. It must have been his first show or something. Yeah. And he's like giving him the ropes and whatnot. And he's like, all right, cool. So first off, your job is to look that way toward the crowd. I don't want to see you looking behind you into the, like seeing what's going on stage. Like you're not here to watch the show. You are here to watch the fucking crowd. If I catch you looking at the stage, you're gone. Second, if somebody jumps up on the rail from our side and is like waving, run over to them. That means there's a crowd surfer. You got to help them out, catch, make sure they don't fall on their heads, make sure they, they can get landed safely. That's going to happen tonight. Just be prepared to you're going to be moving around a lot. Third, and most importantly, this is my fucking stage. Nobody gets on my stage. If you see somebody running toward the stage, you take their fucking asses to the ground. This is my stage. Nobody gets up there. And in my head is yeah, fucking right it is. No fan is on the stage. Do not let them. If somebody goes to get on the stage, you bring their fucking asses to the ground and make it hurt, because no, you don't do that. And in my back of my head, the only thing that ever, during both of these times, I was Dimebag. That's the only thing in my head that I'm no, nobody gets on the stage.
Yeah. Well, so one, when we heard that conversation about the whole nobody gets on my stage thing, I took it a little bit differently, where it was the guy was kind of saying these hooligan metalheads or whatever are going to try to storm the stage or something. We don't do that. But anyways, that's how I took it. We had this conversation afterwards where you're no, I think it was just kind of training him. And I was well, I took it as we're all a bunch of heathens who are going to destroy this place. But anyways, two, the whole dime bag thing comes up in the book.
It does, yeah.
And I think that's where the writer came from, if I remember right, about how they do their shows is with Dimebag getting shot on, or everybody, not everybody knows this, that story, but that's where the Lamb of God is so strict on their writer when they do shows. So anyways, I think that's where we were going.
I think
with
so,
this.
yeah. And it's kind of weird that maybe not weird, I don't know, but it's clearly written into the writer whose responsibility it is to make sure that the venue follows up with that. Is it the managers? Is it the
right?
And the manager, the touring manager, was there. He's the front of house guy. He's on the sound stage. So what really happened here?
And it doesn't really go into how much conversation was about not doing the show, but I remember there was a little bit of conversation. I think, or it was a thought or something of should we even do this? Now I don't know if there was a conversation at all, but I think it was Lamb of God being the fan. We need to do this for the fans more than fuck the venue sort of thing.
Yeah. But we've talked a lot about the show, and it's important because the show is part of. It's the main reason, right?
It's the whole reason, yeah.
But going back to the plane, they're getting off the plane, they get detained. It's announced that hey, somebody died during the show, and I think somebody in the band was wait, somebody died during that show? Yeah. The band had no idea that happened.
Right.
And apparently there's a warrant out for Randy's arrest.
Since that happened.
Well, I don't. Well, that's gray to me. I don't know what.
So David didn't pass away. So they took him to the hospital. I can't remember all the details, but they took him to the hospital the night of the show because he wasn't feeling well.
Yeah, he hit the back of his head, wasn't feeling well, and then fell into a coma or something.
Yeah, so and then he was in a coma for a few weeks, I think.
Maybe 2 months, I think. I want to say 2 months.
Okay. For an extended period of time, he was in a coma. Yeah. So I feel bad. We should have really got those details down. And then he passed away. And then the investigation started. And then he had the warrant for the arrest. But I remember, I don't know if it's in the book or if it was in the Palace Burns, but it was basically why didn't somebody contact us and let us know? We would have addressed this at that time.
It's in the book because apparently the Czech Republic reached out to the U.S. State Department about this. And the U.S. State Department's there's no reason to charge Randy for this, threw it out. And he even brings up later in the book of we've reached out to the State Department to figure out why did you not let us know this was a thing?
Okay. So I'm getting the two. So in the movie or in the Palace Burns, then it's basically just why didn't you?
Yeah, and that's been a big question for me is how the fuck did you not know there's a warrant out for your arrest? Not necessarily you as an individual, but somebody in the band, somebody in the management of the band, the label. How has nobody in any of this giant apparatus that is Lamb of God not heard about this? So I'm curious as to when the warrant was charged or issued. Was it when they knew they had a show gigged and they knew he was in the air?
Coming.
So in my head, that's what it was.
Okay, that's not how I took it. I took it as it'd been out there for a while.
Okay.
And nobody acted on it. And it was if you would have told me, I would have came and addressed this at that time.
Yeah, I took it more as the latter, or not the latter. I took it more as we've been investigating this for a while. Now that we know you're coming and you can't escape, now we're going to get you.
Okay. But yeah, my comment to the whole warrant thing is that some people don't know that they have a warrant out for their arrest. But to also comment on that is Randy didn't think he did anything wrong. He didn't know that anything had happened. So there would be no reason for him to even think that there was a warrant.
Like, we didn't hear anything happen at the show. We didn't know somebody died at the show. We didn't, like, something you would have figured, like, somebody would have picked this up. Like, a Google alert or some sort of alert on, like, Lamb of God or the band members. Like, something should have, in my head, is, like, triggered somebody in, again, the overarching entity that is Lamb of God, not just the members of the band, but everyone, to be like, oh shit, something's going on here you might want to look into.
Right. I don't know if the Czech Republic thought, oh, if we issue a warrant and let them know, then he'll just never come back to the country or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but then again, they apparently they've reached out to the State Department. So like, how is that has to be fucking official enough to be like, something needs to trigger.
I don't remember that part in the book. That's where
it comes up several times in the book.
But not that the Czech Republic reached out to the State Department before Randy got there. But they reach out to the State Department a lot, or the embassy a lot, after he's arrested.
Yes, definitely during the fact, but beforehand, that's when when he's in prison, that's when they find out like, we reached out to your government, and your government didn't provide us with any information, which is why we're now pursuing these these harsher charges on you.
Okay.
Was my understanding while reading it.
Okay, that part I did not catch. So okay, cool. I mean, we don't have all of our facts, so.
And again, it's been a while since we've read it, so definitely not as fresh. But that was definitely something that stuck out in my head, because even going into the book, I was like, how the fuck did you not know you were going to be arrested when you landed? And that was a big question I had going into this. Again, not knowing anything really about this particular case other than you were arrested and later you were acquitted was sort of like in my head going into the book of where I'm at.
Yeah.
But yeah, then he's arrested and he goes to Padarak prison.
I probably don't say it right.
No, probably not.
This always goes back to a friend that we worked with at our first job, and I guess our second job, but at a grocery store. And like, I was big into Soviet history, because that's what I took history as a undergrad, and the Bolsheviks, he said some other word, and I was like, the Bolsheviks? And he's like, oh, well, I read it in a book. Like, I don't know how it's said. So that's why I'm thinking, like, that's going back to this, where I'm like, all these words that we're saying, like, I'm reading it, I don't know how it's pronounced.
I don't have money for an education, but I have money for a library card. Like, it's definitely like that Goodwill Hunting type scenario. I get where he's coming from for sure. Because, I mean, and I'm dyslexic, so I fuck everything up anyway. But he went to the big Czech prison.
The prison, this actually, I think it was a Soviet.
I think it was
like an old Soviet prison. Now that I bring up, so see, my little story about the Soviets was part of the
all comes around.
Yeah.
But when he brought that up and talks about the prison in here, I picture like an old dilapidated like military structure, like a fort, like a castle with dungeons and whatnot, and that's sort of where he was at.
Yeah.
In As the Palace Burns, they actually go to the prison and they film it. And I'm looking at that and like, it's not that bad.
It's from the outside, though.
From the outside,
inside, so. I mean, to be honest, it might be like a normal prison, just dungier. Because he did say that there's like the moldy smell and the mold on the walls and the dirt on the walls. And
that was one point that somebody in my book club brought up of like a negative toward this book is Randy's take on the American justice system and prison system, because multiple times in the book he's like, if this prison was in America, they'd shut this place down. This is not a good prison. Like, no, we have standards here in America. We would not do this. In contrary, not so much.
I mean, Grant, I've never been to prison, but I'm pretty sure that it's probably not the most enjoyable, cleanest place at all.
So like, that was one point somebody in book club brought up where they're like, nah, like.
But it could be okay. So I guess now I'm envisioning the shows that do show prison.
Yes.
Not like movie shows that show prison, but there are like some documentaries and some. Gosh, I'm trying to think of like Locked Up or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was a guy that like basically went to prison on his own accord to like do a documentary. But with that, like they do kind of show it as not a dirty, dungy place. But that could have been just for the show.
Exactly.
To,
That's
like,
all.
Clean it up.
Right. You know ahead of time
Yeah.
the film crew's coming in. And even during this, a British, for like the BBC, they come into this prison.
Yeah. And they treat him so well.
Yeah. And it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, we know we're going to be filmed. We know we're being scrutinized. Let's make this as best as possible.
Yeah. It's almost like when your head boss comes or something, so everybody's on their best behavior or whatever, you know, like.
We worked at Burger King and we knew like there was an inspection coming. And like those were the stressful days because everybody was on point cleaning.
Yeah.
We never cleaned our stations that often, but this was like every burger you make, you clean it. Burger, make, clean it. Burger, make, clean it.
Yeah.
Like
I'm thinking now in my head, like we have the main person coming this week to the office and I'm like, okay, on that day, I need to dress like I work in an office.
Right.
I can't wear jeans. I can't wear, you know, like, so you're on your, you know, like most best behavior. So in a prison aspect, like what we're just saying, like if we saw a picture or a news thing on prisons, it is probably like, oh, we know the news crew's coming. So everybody clean your cells.
Yeah.
You know, sort of thing.
And that kind of gets back to your point, or I think what the point you're trying to make, or what I took from it anyway, of like, you know, we have sort of what we see on TV and in movies of what an American prison system is. So that definitely influences our views. So when Randy is going here, that's probably what he's viewed.
Yeah.
Although he does bring up quite a bit that he has been arrested several times.
In jails, though.
In county jails and city, like little police stations, not in like an actual prison.
I think that's a totally different aspect than a prison. I think there are even differences between like a federal prison and a state prison and like all this stuff. So, anyways, I'm talking like I know anything about prison.
There's one story in the book that was like, it made me smile and laugh about like Randy going to prison in Richmond, getting arrested on like a Friday or something. And he calls his buddy up that he's living with or something. He's like, hey, yeah, I got arrested again. Buddy's like, you want me to come bail you? Like, nah, I'll just sober up here and hang out here for the weekend. I'm good. I have nothing going on anyway. And he like hangs up the phone. There's a big dude in the prison cell with him. And he's like, you better call your friend and ask him to bail you out. And he's like, hey, can I use that phone again? I think that story is like, oh, that's fucking hilarious.
Yeah. That is, so we didn't talk about that, but like there are aspects of Randy going through his time of being arrested, and generally when he was arrested, actually I think every time it was due to alcohol in some way.
Yeah.
And that's where he would find himself in the county jail or the police station jail or whatever they have, wherever he was at.
And that's sort of why it ties into his sobriety for this book a lot, is because a lot of the times when he was, you know, before this period of time and before even the incident, he was in trouble a lot because of his drinking, because of his substance abuse and whatnot, right? And it comes up during Philadelphia. You can see that, like, they get in a fight. The band members get in a fight.
Yeah. The first Lamb of God documentary.
Yeah.
That they did.
That we saw. I don't know if it was their first.
Oh, that's true.
Philadelphia is what it's called.
I only know about Philadelphia and As the Palace Burns.
I would love more as well, but those are the two I know of too.
Yeah.
It was funny. I watched that and like I saw them fighting, and it's like, oh, this isn't the televised fighting you see. It's one person throws a punch, and next thing they're both on the ground.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say, but they're so drunk that he like goes way like misses him.
No, I think of like fighting. I've never been in a fight, honestly. So like I think of fighting like people squaring up and then like taking like a UFC type fight, right? Like you're taking jabs at each other.
Yeah.
It's everybody gets one swing and then you're on the ground rolling around like a bunch of fucking dumbasses. Any case, he's in jail a lot here in the States because of his drinking and whatnot.
Yeah.
And eventually he sobers up and he's like, I need to stop drinking. This is going to kill me.
And I took it as that show in the Czech Republic was the last time he drank.
That's not how I took it.
That's how I took it when I read the book. And I know we had this conversation that you didn't take it that way. So we haven't mentioned this yet, but the night of that show, the only reason why he remembers that show
so vividly
is because that was the night that Paul Gray passed away. And so after the show, he got a call from like Paul's manager.
I think
Paul's
it was
family.
his manager or his publicist who apparently had called him multiple times during the show, and he had a bunch of missed calls from her.
Okay.
And he's like, why the fuck is she calling? She never calls me.
Yeah.
And she never calls me multiple times. And he's sitting there again, like with the phone ringing in his hand. He's like, I better take it because something must be happening.
Yeah.
And then that's where she informed
Yeah.
him. I think I keep saying she, I can't remember for sure.
Yeah. So how I remember him writing in the book is that he did drink that night, but then he stopped drinking after that.
All right, so
How do you remember it?
I remember it as he had been sober up to a period of time, and because the question at trial was, were you drunk? Like, did you have anything to drink that day? And his answers were always, no, I did not have anything to drink that day.
Okay.
And it was, he had been sober for a period of time.
Okay.
And it's when he learned about Paul's passing that is like, I could drink in his honor, but I'm not going to. Like, I don't want to tumble down that hole. Now, I don't know if he did. Again, with sobriety in particular and any substance abuse, from what I've known by hearing from other people, is it's not a once you're done, you're done.
Yeah, it's an everyday thing.
You will drink again in your life, and you will falter again. The point is to not, destroy yourself and be like, well, I had 100x days of sobriety, and then I drank one beer, and therefore it's all over, and don't do it again. But it's more of like, life happens, you're going to struggle. When it happens, like, reach out to your support group, reach out to people, and it's fine. You're not a horrible person for not being perfect. Like, you're a human. Like, you are imperfect by nature. And so that's how I took that anyway, is that he didn't drink. He had been sober for a period of time before that. That happened, and it was like a very close, like, you need to drink again.
See, I thought he did drink. And I thought that was the last time he had ever had, he had drank up until this. I mean, as far as we know, maybe in Just Beyond the Light, there's more to it, but that's how I remember it, or what I thought. Comment to your whole sobriety thing is there's lots and lots of people who get sober and never touch a drug or never touch a drink again. So just how you said it, it kind of seems like you're going to do it again, so it's okay.
No,
I know that's not what I know that's not what you were meaning, but that's how it came off. Just
I get that there are those people, but also I get that there are people who, they will drink again in their life, but at the same time, it doesn't mean what you have done and where you have grown is something to throw away. Yeah. Like, I
understand what you were saying. Yeah. I'm just saying it came off as like, you're going to do it again, so just get back on the wagon again.
That's not what I meant by any means.
I understand what you meant. I was just adding a comment.
Any case.
So Paul dying, then I think after that there's a lot of in the prison. Prison
back to
stuff.
Paul dying. This was the first time reading this. I think this was our first day in Spain, and like we couldn't sleep, so I was up at like 4 a.m. reading because I was on a fucked up schedule, and I just remember bawling my eyes out when I read that. Like, holy fuck, that ripped me apart.
Same. So I read this on my way back from Ireland. That part. I was very tired that day. I was very emotional that day because I had lots of plane issues and I thought I wasn't even coming home. I was sitting next to a couple whose daughter didn't make the plane, adult daughter, I should say, did not make the plane because of her.
Because of ticketing and whatnot.
Well, because of like the timing of her U.S.
Layover and whatnot.
Well, no. Like,
connection?
No, paperwork to get into the U.S. So, because they weren't from the U.S.
Yeah.
So anyways, and I'm like just sitting here looking like I do, but I'm just bawling my eyes out sitting next to this lady who's probably like, what the fuck is wrong with this girl? and it all was, and like, it was almost instant. Like as soon as I read Paul died, I lost it.
Yeah. Same.
I didn't know you were crying at 4 a.m. when I was sleeping.
Yeah. I could not. Like it was, that was a tough little bit for me for sure.
Yeah.
There's a couple of moments. I think there's only one other one for me that I actually
during the trial,
cheered up or choked up and cried. I don't think during the trial. No.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to that later, I guess.
Okay. Anyways, I kind of want to skip some of the, like, not go into deep. Like, it's just the mundane of being in prison. Is there anything in there?
There's a few elements that I really liked about it.
Okay.
Dorge was super fucking cool. I love the Dorge. I want to say character because he's a character in the book, but he's a real person. I love this dude. Like hearing them talk, like Randy talk about their time together. Dorge was a Mongolian. Apparently the Czech Republic hates Mongolia because they put Randy in there like, oh, he's going to hate this because we all hate Mongolians is how I got it. Like apparently the Czech prison guards were very racist towards Mongolians. And by putting Randy in this prison was sort of like a diss on Randy or something.
Yeah. There are a couple things I want to go back to before the prison, but
keep going. Go ahead.
No. Keep going on the prison.
Okay. Go ahead. All right. We're on a different tangent. Go ahead and I'll get back to my Dorge stuff. But what do you want to say?
So it has to do with the metal community and how people just come together as a community, basically. So basically the guard that is with Randy most of the time is like, I picture him as like this bigger, scruffier guy who does know a little bit of English, but mostly
the Tom Selleck looking character.
Yeah. I think his name was like Alex or something.
I can't remember. Right. He called him Tom Selleck, and there was another guard who looked like Tom Selleck, but a younger age. So it was Tom Selleck 1 and Tom Selleck 2.
Yes,
I think. I can't remember.
So, and those are the guards that were like driving him, right?
No.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, you're talking about his guards. Okay.
Yeah. So, but anyway.
Or not his guards, the drivers.
Yeah. So, and then there was another time where I think he had to go to a doctor or something, but that guard that was driving him ended up being a metalhead and knew who he was. Do you remember this?
Oh, I think you're all right. So there's the guards that took him from the airport to the prison.
Yeah. And those are the guards that were with him most of the time, right?
And there was one guard that was like a really big dude, and that big dude, I think, was also one of the guards that took him from the jail to the doctor to get his prescription.
Okay.
And there was a different driver. No, he was the driver. I think he was the main driver, and there was a different guard or something. But that main driver, that main big dude driver, like sped through the city super fucking fast.
Okay.
I remember that part because that made me smile a little bit.
Okay.
Just like, we're going to drive as fast as we want down the roads.
Anyways, there's at one point a driver that he has that's a metalhead. I think it's
one of these two guys. Yeah.
One of these things. So, but it's just kind of like the scenario where he knows who Randy is, knows what's happening or whatever, treats him like a normal person, gives him coffee, cigarettes.
That was on the way to the doctor, yeah.
Okay,
because they stopped for McDonald's as well.
Yeah. Listens to, I don't know if it was rock or metal music on the radio or whatever, but like just treats him like a normal person. Not like, it almost seemed like all the other guards were kind of like, oh, you're an American celebrity. Like, we're going to treat you like shit sort of thing. And so what I was going to say about the metal community is like when he gets out of the van or out of the vehicle, I don't know what it was, but out of the vehicle to go back into prison, he kind of, I think, says something to him like, you know, stay strong, you got this sort of thing. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when it was. I can't remember if it was when they first came to the prison or when they came back, but I think it was when they first came to the prison where there was something going on in the prison and they weren't allowing him to come in. So they had to sit out there outside the prison. Like, so I think when you went in, you went through the first gate and that closes and then you go into the second gate into the actual prison. They were in that first, like that gated off area where they couldn't leave and couldn't go forward. And that's where something was going on in the prison, like a lockdown or something.
Okay.
And that's where the guard was like, we're going to be here a little bit. Here's a cigarette. Hey, dude, stay strong. And there was sort of a conversation of, I saw you at such and such festival before.
Yeah.
So there, I can't remember when exactly that was, but also going back to when they were going to like the eye doctor thing, they did listen to metal music. It was one of the local stations. It was pop. And then they also listened to, it was like just generic pop music's pop music. Right. But then they turned on like the rock station and it had One by Metallica.
Oh, okay.
And I remember in the section because I was like, One is one of my favorite songs by Metallica. And Randy kind of shits on the song a little bit. In the exact same way that I shit on every Ozzy song. In that Randy loves the song from what I read. But as a kid, when it first came out, it got overplayed way too much.
Right.
So to the point of like, I'm glad I'm listening to this. This is great. I think this is good.
It's better than pop music.
Yes, this is good music.
Right.
But is this the best you could do type thing? Same with me with Ozzy. It's like, I'd rather listen to Ozzy than anything else. But when Crazy Train comes on, fuck, I'm upset. But if it's Crazy Train or pop, I'm like, give me Crazy Train. That's fine.
It's like Crazy Train or George Strait.
Yeah. I'm doing Crazy Train for sure.
Yeah.
So that made me smile because like, oh shit, Randy has the same viewpoint on Metallica that I do on Ozzy.
Yeah, that's funny.
And it's the same reason too. Like it got overplayed on the radio.
Right. Yeah, I just remember that that's kind of stayed in my mind of the whole aspect of almost everybody else treated him like he was like this American celebrity who could, you know, like thought he was better than everybody else. And then this one guy treated him like a normal person.
Yeah, and I never got that vibe as well. There were a
okay.
couple guards where I got were like, oh, I know who you are. There was a guard who'd come by and like gave him extra shit in between like cigarettes or something, or would help pass notes along the way. And it was kind of funny because Randy's currency, because he didn't have really currency when he first got there until he got like his canteen account or whatnot figured out, and like his wife came and brought him a bunch of goodies. His currency was everything he had in his pocket, which were signed pics. So he was handing out pics as favors to people, which is funny to me to think about. Like in prison, this is currency, but you go to a show and you throw a bunch of pics out, and we're all like a bunch of, you know, those fish that jump up.
Yeah, we're like
oh, give me.
That is kind of funny to watch.
But like from his perspective, is like they knew who he was. Like this had currency value to it. People wanted this to collect it, and that's another thing too. Like he didn't necessarily have access to like the newspapers and the magazines that the rest of the prison may have had, and apparently he was a big celebrity in quotes in the Czech Republic because he was all over the newspaper. Big rock star, American rock star gets arrested.
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to like, how the fuck did nobody pick this up? Like somebody dies at big American rock show.
Yeah.
Like how was that not picked up? But yet you arrest him and then
now
it's picked
a big
up.
Thing. Now you mentioned the rock star thing. I remember there was a part in the book where Randy goes into the whole aspect of being a rock star and how he doesn't feel like he's a rock star. He's just a normal person from motherfucking Virginia. Sorry, Richmond motherfucking Virginia, who just lives in a normal house, lives a normal life, does everything normal. He just happens to be the lead vocalist of Lamb of God. And he even goes into, I think he goes into the whole aspect of like the lead person's, you know, viewed more as like the spokesperson. He doesn't necessarily like that. You know, he doesn't, like I said, he doesn't see himself as a rock star. He's not living like this lavish life sort of thing, you know, all these things. But to be in the Czech Republic, it was kind of shown as like this American rock star type thing.
Yeah. We'll get back to the prison bit here in a second, but this is another good conversation I think that I want to have as well, because I remember that as well, where he, and this is something I liked about Randy during this book, of there are moments where he can call out or name like this magazine or this individual, and he doesn't. He leaves it more of like, it's sort of an ambiguous or this nebulous sort of term of like a magazine reached out. What magazine? Is it Rolling Stones? Is it Metal Hammer? Is it Revolver? Who the fuck is it? I don't know. Those are the three I know. There's more out there. Oh, Decibel as well. Decibel.
No, there's a lot more.
Those are the four I know. So that's why I brought them up. But the point is, he's like, this is a very well-known magazine. They reached out for the 100 greatest living metal legends or rock legends or something.
Rock stars.
And he was on the list. And he's like, I'm living, but I'm not a rock legend. No. And it instantly took me, the same thing. Like it took me back to the Formula One season on Netflix, Drive to Survive, I think it's called. And that first season, they talked to every driver. And they're like, what's your name? And they'd say their name. I'm Brian. I want to be the greatest driver in the world. I'm Max. I want to be the greatest driver in the world. I'm Karen. I want to be the greatest driver in the world. And it may have been scripted, but it may not have been. Like they think they can be the greatest driver in the world. And in my head, it's like, no, you can't. You need to drive for one of the big three companies or the big three racers to be that big driver. You're down here on the last team. There's no fucking way in the world you're going to win. And that brought like that whole conversation with Randy reminded me of that, of how do you as a musician say like, I want to be the greatest musician in the world. I want to be Metallica. You can't. Like there's very few bands that will be the next Metallica, and Lamb of God is not that band. Like they will not be the next Metallica. So how do you find comfort in where your place is in the metal community? And it seems like Randy is in that good spot where he's like, I'm not a legend. That's sort of where this is very rambly, but that's sort of like the psychology of this, of like, I don't think they can be the next Metallica, Lamb of God.
Right.
But yet they can be great. And how do you find comfort in knowing what you provide and what you've done? And they've done amazing things in terms of their music.
I think there's a lot of metal bands that are that way, where they aren't that top tier, but they also don't go around acting like they're the top tier.
Yes.
Which I really give humble, respects to, because I mean, to think about we go to like Milwaukee Metal Fest where the bands just walk around like normal, and just with the normal crowd, we go to
the boat.
And we keep saying the boat, we mean the Headbangers boat, which is hosted by Lamb of God. And, you know, I'm sure it might be the same on like Shiprocked and 70,000 Tons and all those things, where the bands just kind of mingle with the common folk, I'm going to say.
Yeah, there's no ego to it. It's more of like, we're just here as people, as fans even. Yeah,
and I don't know how it is on other boats or other festivals or other, I mean, I've heard stories of other performers who I'm like, who the fuck do you think you are that you can come out 2 hours late and put on a show? Like, granted, I think Guns N' Roses was that way.
Axl, 100%.
Like has that ego. I know when he was here in Chicago in 2023, is that when? Or 2024? Was it last summer or 2 summers ago?
We didn't see it. 2023 is when we saw them. That hot as fuck day.
Yes, it was hot as fuck. I mean, it was like 114 degrees with heat index. Anyways, so story time for me. The lady that does my hair's husband works at the hotel where they were staying.
Oh.
And he had a rider on his hotel room that they had to cover every mirror, have like black sheets, like all this shit for him to stay one night in the hotel. And at first I was like, oh my God, he works there? Like, that'd be so cool. But then when she told me all the shit that they had to do to get his room ready for him, I was like, fuck him. Like, and I know there's a lot of people out there like that, but I'm like, it's literally you're staying one night in a hotel and then you're going on to the next thing.
Yeah, I can't speak to that, but I could definitely speak to myself. I would do that. But at this point, it's more of like, I'm going to throw shit in the rider as a joke to like see, I show up. If my mirrors are not covered, cool. If they are, I smile at that point. That's how I think Axl is not that way.
Then you give a tip to the people like, thank you for doing every single little thing I have in my rider. Where he's probably more like, I'm not walking in that room until it's covered.
He seems like a bit of a diva, but in terms of his performance, I think he's honed that, at least that aspect of it in.
Well,
but that thing goes in like Ronnie, right? Ronnie Ratkin.
Yeah. Oh,
where,
yeah.
To me, Ronnie Ratkin is now our generation's Axl Rose.
Yeah.
Where
it's like, thinks he's like above everything.
Yeah. It's like, you're just going to like alienate your fans or potential fans for little gain.
Yeah.
That 20 years from now, later in your career, you'll be like, oh shit, that was dumb.
Maybe.
That's my mind, in my view anyway. Yeah. Anyway, this isn't about him. This is about Randy and this book. Let's get back to that.
Yeah. So, but anyways, to say all that, like I think the whole rock legend thing, and also how he viewed himself in prison versus how the guards viewed him in prison, was that he was like this big, you know, American rock star sort of thing. But then also he did say many times in the book where he had to kind of be careful when he would go to that yard, or like where all the cells kind of come together for rec time or whatever it was, because if somebody found out who he was or that he was like this rock star, there was the potential that he would be taken advantage of. You know, something serious could have happened, or it could have just been, is it like considered bribed or what? Not bribed, that's the wrong word, but like where somebody's like, oh, well, now you owe me 7 cigarettes every day, or, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not explaining
extorted.
Extorted.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, I'm not explaining the prison lingo correctly here, but like where, you know, it's kind of like you come from something, so now you owe us something.
I got that vibe a little bit at the beginning in particular. As he sort of settled into going to the yard, I feel like it wasn't necessarily that.
No, it wasn't. I think that was
definitely his mindset going in.
But then also when he gets moved, so because he moves cells a couple times, it's like now I'm with all new people, and now that all has to start over again.
Yes, there is that aspect of like, you always have that, like, so when he first goes to prison, he's in quote unquote solitary. It's not solitary. He's in a cell by himself with Dorj, as we have mentioned before.
Then they get moved to another room with another Mongolian. So it's like 2 Mongolians.
Eventually he gets moved to another room with another Mongolian. This is cell 512.
Yes. Yeah.
This is where the song comes from. It's the 3 of them now. But even at that early stage, just the 2 of them, he like, I got that vibe too. He went in like, I had to be very cautious, very enclosed.
Yep.
Dorj didn't speak any English, which I thought was kind of cool because Randy talked about trying to teach him English.
Yeah.
I did kind of like, what the fuck, Randy? Like, because there's a part where he's trying to teach Dorj English, and Dorj tries to teach him Mongolian. And after a little bit, Randy's like, I'm not going to take the time to learn this. I don't like the sound of it. I don't like the throatiness of it.
Yeah.
So fuck that. We're only going to do English. So that part of me is like, oh, come on, Randy.
I didn't like that either. I really didn't. But I don't even know how to say this without coming off. I think it's the way that people who only speak English think. It's like, oh, this is too hard. I don't want to learn something else. Where many other people in the world know multiple languages to the point that they can, have a conversation or at least get your point across. Where even us, I mean, we can just speak for us. Like, we don't know hardly any of another language. Spanish a little bit, and I know 2 words in German.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, to have a conversation though is like not
I do feel like it would be like, if you spoke one language and I spoke another, it would be best for one of us to learn a common language and then teach the third language, at least a basic grasp of that common language. I do feel like that's better than like, I'm going to teach you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you do the same thing. And then like, okay, how do we progress from here type thing? How do I know when I tell you the ABCs that we're doing the ABCs? You know what I mean? Like, so I kind of see it from that point, but I get what you're saying for sure of like
everybody should speak English.
Yeah. Like that one part was like, come on, like it's not that bad.
Yeah.
George also, he did not like his whistling. He hated his whistling. Yeah. And apparently there were 2 Ukrainians outside.
Oh, right. I forgot about this part.
So that was one part, especially that brought up in my book club, of how the fuck do you know they're Ukrainian? Like, it's just Eastern European. Are you just picking a country and then running with it? Ukraine right now in our current geopolitical climate is very, prominent. Was it back in 2010? I can't remember when their revolution was. I think it was 2014. 2016.
Yeah, 2014, I think.
So did he know Ukrainian language back then, or was he just picking a country? I don't take much merit on that.
Somebody maybe told him that there's Ukrainian. Yeah.
So when he said
there were some guards that spoke some English.
Yeah.
Generally, I think they would give him the guard that would act like he didn't speak English, or they would purposely give him the check paperwork or the like stuff like that. So
the point being, like, there were a bunch of people after lights out shouting into like this, because it sounded like it was a giant square, and they pointed in the middle of like the courtyard thing, and they all just sit there and yell and talk amongst each other. And these like Ukrainians,
people across
in different cells, and these Ukrainians were different. They were the ones that would talk the longest. And one night, Randy's like, I just started making monkey noises, and the whole like cell yard lit up with animal noises, like to drown them out. He's like, that was a good success for me. Other things.
Yeah, other things in the prison that
I learned that Randy's a sweet tooth. When his wife came, he brought like a goodie box. He doesn't say what sweets he likes.
Yeah.
But I'm also a sweet tooth. I like gummy bears, gummy worms, Butterfingers, and like taffies. What's his like crutch? Is it Snickers? Is it chocolates? Like, I don't know what it is. He didn't say what it was. Skittles. Like, he doesn't say what his sweet tooth is. He just says, I have a massive fucking sweet tooth.
There was, I think the other part, this happens during the prison part, but it's not about the prison, but it's his perspective of what would happen if an American goes to prison in a different country.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying, like, I just thought the embassy was going to come get me. Like, there was no reason for me to be there. Like, they were just going to show up and come get me. I don't think that ever happens. I think that's only in movies. Maybe it does happen to some people, but
I don't think it happens to anybody.
I don't think so either. I think it's just like something in movies where like it's like the embassy's coming to get you sort of thing, or like America's going to come save you sort of thing. But also it goes into a lot of how he has to learn the Czech legal system in a way of like how to talk to the lawyers, and he obviously had to have translators that help him, and like the whole prosecution thing where we kind of alluded to this, where it's like he was put in the prison for murder, but it was what would be translated to as manslaughter here. He doesn't even know how long he would be there if he got convicted, and somebody had to tell him like, oh, it's like 10 to 15 years or something, or 5 to 10 years or something.
Yeah, and we're glossing over a lot. There's a lot of really cool things in the prison.
Oh.
Not cool, but there's a lot of good story, good, written word about the prison in here.
There is. A lot of the book is about the prison.
Yes.
And which is about, it's written for that way. However, I took a lot of those pages, like The Devil in the White City soil pages.
I hated the fucking soil, but I stopped reading the book, which is like page 3. Fuck that book.
If you haven't read Devil in the White City, it goes back and forth between the Holmes murders and building the Chicago World's Fair. And there are pages and pages and pages about building the fair and how the soil is and how like they had to build it up to like hold the buildings and like all that stuff.
Because Chicago is a swamp. You can't build high buildings on like unstable ground. So you have to figure out a way to do that. Yeah. Chicago, our home, is the birth city of the skyscraper. You think of New York for skyscrapers. No, it started fucking here in the Midwest.
Anyways, I like The Devil in the White City, but part of the prison pages, because even one chapter is like 80 pages long. I'm exaggerating maybe, but to me, I'm like, okay, I get it. It's the drawn out of being in prison. The life is the same. Every day is the same. All this stuff. But to me, that was just boring. I wanted to get to like what happens sort of thing.
That brings up my biggest complaint with this book is it is very repetitive. It is very long-winded. And in the book, Randy calls himself out on that. He says, I am a long-winded person.
Yeah.
But there is one section I read where he's talking about his sobriety. And he's like, I stopped drinking because I don't want to die. I do not want to die. That's why I stopped drinking. I no longer drink because I don't want to die. Like, it was like that. Basically, each paragraph said the exact same thing and it went on for like 2 or 3 pages. Again, it's the soil. It's the soil issue with Devil in the White City. And it felt very repetitive, not necessarily long-winded, but repetitive. You said the same thing 4 different times.
I guess that's
back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah, maybe that's where I should have said it in a different way, where it is just like, okay, like let's get on to what's happening. We didn't say this at the beginning of talking about this, but Randy does say I think near the beginning of the book, he's not going to focus on the trial that much. It's more on his days in the jail.
Yeah.
And the aspects around that. So I guess going into it, we kind of knew that this wasn't going to be like XYZ happened. It does get there eventually, but like that's what I wanted to know more than I woke up.
His time in prison.
Yeah, like I woke up, I went to the yard, I went to shower, I went to bed, I woke up,
Yeah.
Granted, that is prison life. I don't know.
So I guess a couple of things real quick. My thing about it being repetitive and just this, you said the same thing 4 different fucking times. He does say in this as well that he went to college to become an English major. Like that was his college background. His college education was in literature and English literature.
I don't remember that. So good catch on that.
It came up big in our book club.
Oh, okay.
Because as soon as he said that, about everybody in our book club was like, oh, fuck, this is going to be a painful thing to read. And everybody in the book club also pointed out like this book could have helped a lot from an editor.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, did he not have an editor? And I need to look that up. I don't know.
It would say in the beginning. You talk and I'll look.
But one of the members of our book club is actually a writer, and he said he has published shit and whatnot. And he was like, there are some editors who, depending on who the client is, who the writer is, and their celebrity status, will not push back. Like, you can write whatever you want and we'll just publish it. And there's some people who will push back, like, you need to change this up, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And they might push back, even like the writer will just say like, no, I'm not doing that. I am such and such person. I will not do that. I can kind of sort of see Randy being that sort of stubborn person. He seems like a stubborn individual who's like, I wrote what I wrote and I'm going to publish what I wrote.
Yeah.
Especially around the comment of, I only want to write fiction if it's guaranteed to be published. I'm not going to waste my time to do this type thing.
I don't know if there is an editor, because it does mention that all the photographs are by Randy, written or copywritten by Randy, but there's no mention of an editor. The publisher is First Capo Press, but other than that, like, there's no mention, so maybe not.
And it's a long book. It's 500 and some odd pages. Yeah. So I do feel like some of that repetitiveness, some of that long-windedness could have been honed in a little bit better.
Yeah.
And this book could have gone from 500 to 300 pages, maybe. But that was sort of one negative I have toward this book is it was very repetitive.
Yeah.
I'm fine with a long-winded person. We're already like 2 hours into this fucking podcast.
Yeah.
And we're only in prison, so.
But yeah, I mean, maybe it was the whole point of the book of like the repetitiveness of, I mean, like what you're saying, like it is the repetitiveness. And I've said it multiple times. That's prison life. It's just the same thing every day. So maybe it was the whole point of writing it.
It could be. I don't think so. I think it's a happy accident, but I think it could have been. Otherwise, there would have been more instances of that. But yeah, I guess I've alluded to this. We've talked a long fucking time, and we're only in prison.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really great things in prison. The one thing I want to touch on before we get to the trial is the bail process.
Yeah, I was just going to say we need to talk about the bail process.
You do it, talk.
So I don't know how the bail process in Czech Republic works. This is how it worked for Randy from my memory of reading. So,
not only in the Czech Republic, we don't know how the bail process necessarily works here in the United States.
I don't know.
So go ahead. I'll just throw that little caveat in there as well.
That's true. I don't know anything about the bail process anywhere in the world. But it seems like they had negotiated a bail of, I think it was $200,000, like US dollars.
Yeah, I wouldn't say negotiated. The bail was set, I would say, at $200,000.
Oh, I thought the lawyers had to push for it.
I mean, I think that's how bail processes go regardless, is like, I think my client needs to have a low bail. I think they need to have a high bail. We're going to meet in the middle. And the judge just picks whatever they pick.
Again, I don't know the process.
Exactly, yeah. The bail was set at X.
Okay, this bail was supposed to be $200,000. The band paid it. The Lamb of God band paid it.
With not just being able to pay it, they did fundraisers. They sold shit.
That was for the second bail.
Oh, okay. So this is where I thought that was for the first bail.
No,
okay.
I'm pretty sure the first bail is. So now we're alluding to that there was two bails. So I'm pretty sure the band paid it, the $200,000, and then it was the judge or the government, somebody like basically denied him getting out because they thought that he wouldn't come back.
So yeah, the bail was set, and I think the prosecution was like,
The prosecution, yeah.
we need to not let them go. I know bail was set. I know bail was paid. We can't let them go. And then the courts eventually said, I agree with the prosecution. Bail will be raised.
Yeah.
Because if you can raise this much money this quickly, you will not be coming back.
Like you paid it to, exactly. Like
which is weird to
put
say,
this
like you
money
paid this
up.
too quickly.
Yeah, like you put this up, which I do know. So I watch a lot of true crime and like court. I love court process and all that stuff. And sadly, I just don't know about the bail process. But I do know that like when you are a flight risk, you will either be given no bail or a bail that's so exorbitant, like, or, exaggerated.
We don't anticipate you paying this.
Yeah, like say it'll be like for us, like $1 million bail, like we would never be able to pay that.
And I agree, like flight risk, define what that means.
Right.
Like as soon as you get bail, you're going to fly home. Of course, Randy's going to fucking fly home to America.
Yeah.
But does that mean he's not going to return?
Right.
Is then a question of his character and blah, blah, blah.
I think they even brought into that, like, well, this happened 2 years ago and we just got him. And then it went into the whole, like, we didn't know about it.
Yeah.
But anyways, so then they raised the bail again. I think it was another 200,000 or it was 250,000. I don't know. They had to pay like double basically. And that's when the band did a whole bunch of fundraising, which you can also see in As the Palace Burns. They're like, what can we sell? Like what of band use? Like
they had like posters and lyric sheets and guitars and like drum kit shit.
The backdrops from concerts and everything. Like just what can we sell to raise money? People were making T-shirts to sell. Like you see that more in Philadelphia because obviously Randy doesn't know all this is happening. I mean, he knows that people are trying to fundraise in the book. Not Philadelphia, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say you don't see any of that in Philadelphia.
No, sorry. As the Palace Burns. So, and then also, I believe Ozzy gives money. Do you remember all the band members?
They don't. So this is where I don't know because I remember the band raising money and I remember bail being met that first time and then they raise it and Randy's like, our band already paid this and it was hard as fuck
Like, we
to
don't have the
pay
money.
this. Like,
Yeah.
we do not have cash flow to pay for this. Like, our money is based on us touring, and you cannot tour without a lead singer. So how the fuck? And even the band was like, we need to start touring. We had gigs booked to tour. Like, what the fuck's going to go on? How are we going to replace Randy? Not replace Randy, but find, like, how are we going to tour without Randy, basically? And in any case, the first bell was met. Then, the second bell gets raised. And I don't remember at what point, but Ozzy and Sharon wrote a letter to the courts being like, Randy's an upstanding person. He's a great person.
But didn't they give money too?
So they don't ever say that they gave money.
Oh, okay.
Randy says for the second bail, a band paid for it.
Okay.
What band he says in the book, and this is like a thing I love about Randy, with the same thing with the magazine of like,
oh, he's not like giving names.
I am not going to tell you who I know or what I know. I'm not going to give the names. All I know is I have the like, this person reached out to me and they gave me the money.
Okay, so I could be wrong on the bail then. Maybe the first one, the band paid some
That's
of it
what I thought.
and they raised money.
That's what I
thought. And the second one, another band paid it.
Yes.
But I believe that they kind of cleared out the accounts for Lamb of God to pay the first band.
Yes, exactly. They basically...
first bail, excuse me.
They basically, from my understanding of the book, they wiped themselves out financially of like, we need to get Randy home.
Okay. Okay, so this is kind of making sense to me. So then Ozzy and Sharon wrote a letter.
At some point, I don't know when that was.
Okay.
I don't know at what point that was.
Okay.
Yes.
And then somebody paid the bail. It wasn't necessarily Ozzy that
And
paid
he
it.
never says what band. In my head, I was reading that, and I was going to ask
Okay.
you this during that, of what band would it be? Ozzy is number one on my list. Metallica is number two.
Yeah.
Slipknot, number three.
Yeah.
Outside of that, what metal band has the capital to
just
give
that much?
$400,000 at the whim?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any metal band who can just like, boom, here you go. Outside of those three.
Yeah. And those that have connection to Randy as well. I mean, that's...
Yes,
I mean,
also that.
A lot of bands probably have connection to Randy. I shouldn't have said that.
So I think it's one of those three that paid the bill for the
Okay.
second.
No, this... Okay, I'm going to reread that part because I'm really interested in that now, like how it all worked. But yes, definitely. So anyways, bail is finally paid.
Yeah.
It's not like instant. Even that one isn't instantaneous where he gets to go home. I think it took a little bit for him to get released, like maybe a week or so.
Yeah, so that's the thing too. He does talk about that where he's like, in the States, when you pay your bail, you're free.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, I don't know. I don't think that's how it works. I do think the prosecution has a time in there to say like, no. However, I do think once the bail is set, it's set. There's no sort of negotiating past that other than
unless you do something wrong, they can raise it. So they can raise it. I've seen that because there's bail hearings where it's like it was set at X amount, but then like we caught this person talking to somebody about fleeing or something, and then it's
so it's like afterwards. Yeah.
But I do. I mean, maybe this is bond different than bail?
No, I think it's the same thing.
Okay.
You have bond courts and bail. Like bond courts are who set your bail.
Okay.
I think. Again, I'm not a fucking lawyer. I don't know any of this shit.
But I think that is because like I've watched so many things on like court and stuff, and it's like literally like the person gets arrested, they have somebody come and bond them out, and then they get to go home right then.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know if that's different than like bail.
Like you have your bond people down the street, like in businesses.
Yeah.
Where they will then pay your bill on your behalf, but then you give them like an interest rate on top of their money.
Yeah, but then you get to go home.
But yeah, as soon as your money is paid, you get to go home.
Yeah.
So that was the nuance here where it's like, I agree with Randy where it was paid. Why the fuck am I not free?
Well, it was paid once.
Yes.
And then it was paid again.
And
he still didn't get to go home right away.
And so that was sort of like the point of their appeal process. I would assume it was, we set bail at $200,000. The prosecution has X time to appeal that decision to the higher court, at which point it could be raised or like we're done, or you continue down the appeal process, right?
Yeah.
That's where I was like, once it's set, it's set. But if you keep appealing it, then once you get to your final appeal, blah, 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 whatever happens, right? So I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways.
We're not lawyers or legal people.
No, obviously not.
In any case, we don't know how bail process works in the Czech or in America. So, we have no fucking clue. The point is, bail was made. Randy had to stay in prison after that.
Yes, exactly.
Second bail made. Randy had to stay in prison.
Yeah.
He was in his, like, again, solitary, quote unquote, confinement for 30-ish odd days. I think the last 3 days he went to general population.
I think so, yeah. And I don't know what that means in that prison. Like,
it seems like a more what you think of prison in the U.S. That's what it sounded like to me in terms of, like, with the cells open and you just go in and out.
Oh, you walk in and out and, like, can go sit at those tables or whatever.
Right, the little common area as well.
Again, I don't know how prison is. So.
Yes, yeah. We glossed over a lot of prison like stuff. Like there's talk about the shower and dropping the soap a couple times. There's talk about colostomy bags as well in the prison. The only other prison part that I really enjoyed and loved is when Randy moved from the cell with him and George to him, and I can't remember the other guy's name. I'm sorry. He was like a white collar, like I did stock fraud or something like that. The other
Mongolian?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he did like embezzlement or something. Yeah.
And he spoke English pretty well.
Yeah.
And Randy kept doing his English lessons to George, and there was one part where he kept trying to do like the TH for George, and he could not like get it. And Randy was getting so frustrated from one day where he's like, no, and George could not do it. And eventually George finally did it perfectly, and then just like a fucking child.
Yeah.
And it was like, and Randy's like, I knew this motherfucker could do that sound, and he chose not to this entire time. And a part of me was like, that made me love George even more. Of just like, I get what you're trying to do. I don't care. I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to live my life.
Yeah, like, what does he have to live for? He's just waiting to be deported.
Oh, no, he's living for vodka. Polvo vodka.
Yes, he is. But he's just waiting to get deported back to... That's what I was meaning. Like
Mongolia, where vodka is plenty.
Yes, yeah.
I love George. He was so fucking cool. Anywho...
Yeah,
there's a lot in the book about the prison. It's a lot of fun. Not fun. It's a lot of great reading.
It is, yeah.
I use fun interchangeably for great and whatnot there.
Yeah, you say fun in weird ways.
I do, yes. Yeah. That funeral was fun, right? Like, no, it wasn't. It was a good time. And it wasn't even a good time. Anywho, moving on. He's released.
Yes.
And there was talk about him in the book of, like, there's going to be a secret agent who's going to speed me down to the airport and whatnot. And no, he went to the airport. They flew first class, which is a luxury that he doesn't experience that often, if ever.
Which I didn't realize that with band members, that they don't always. I mean, I guess it goes back to the celebrity thing or the like rock star thing. Like you just assume that they're flying first class, but we were on a flight with a member from Ice Nine Kills, and we were in. Not first class, but we were in
like the business class or something.
Business class, yeah, like whatever that middle section is that you get the little bit bigger seat. And he was in the back of the plane. I mean, like he walked past us. So, it's you don't always fly that big first class airfare. Or whatever.
I thought about that because before even reading this book, I kind of knew bands didn't do that because Corey Taylor was talking during like an interview or something of. I love touring on a bus because I can have my family with me and it's relaxing. Plus, it's cheaper than flying for every show. Yeah. And we don't make the kind of money where we can fly first class with our family for every gig. But I can load their asses on a bus and we can go from city to city. So it's not as comfortable, but at least I have those comforts of my family with me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and again, I think it's just the illusion that you have with the rock star or celebrity status that they're flying first class. But nope, they're just like us who are in normal seats. So
there was one scene as well before he got arrested where they were going to a show in Finland or something. I don't know what show it was, but we watched the
it's in Norway.
Is it Norway? Okay. Yeah. We watched that movie
Heavier
Trip. The first one. And they find like Viking LARPers who ferry them across in a Viking longboat to there. And Randy depicted a scene similar to that. And we both watched that movie. Like, is this the same festival?
So that one might be in Norway and this might be in Finland. I can't remember. But basically, because that was the night before they went to the Czech Republic.
Yes.
And he was like, I was literally just on a boat being ferried to an island.
Island for music, to listen to great music.
Yeah, to perform at a festival. And now all of a sudden I'm sitting in a jail cell.
Yep.
like sort of thing. So
I wanted to bring that up real quick. But now let's get to the trial.
well, before he even gets to the trial, he has like a little section. It's only a few pages about his baby daughter dying.
So it's not during that part.
Yes,
I don't think.
It is. It's right before he goes home, because it's the chapter right before it says to hear welcome home. I just looked it up.
Okay.
It is. So it's the chapter between him getting released and getting off the airplane in New York.
Okay. So it's been a while since I've read this. I remember that, and bearing the lead ahead of time, I also did not know Randy had a daughter who had died at birth.
I didn't know that either.
And he talks about that during this book in a heart-wrenching way of carrying her body, and like it's
don't even talk about it. I'm gonna start crying.
Fucking horrible to read.
I can't believe that he went through that.
Yeah, and I did not know that going into the book.
No.
And again, people in the book club are like, this is way too late in the book to be talking about this. This should have been earlier in the book. And again, that's I think where an editor would have helped as well. But after reading it, I always thought that this was placed in the book and then in the story of just before meeting Daniel's family.
Yeah.
Because it was more of, I know the pain they're going through of having to deal with a child dying.
Yeah.
And so I always, maybe that's just in my head how I rearranged it of like the trauma of, and that's why I get why it was so late in the book.
Right.
But I did not realize it was right when he went home, not before meeting the family.
Yeah. So when Brian changed out the battery of our camera, I was trying to look up the whole bail thing, and noticed that we didn't say this in the whole prison thing, but there was a fan who was in prison with him who I think was there because of alcohol or drugs or something, and basically Randy wrote him a letter. Explaining his sobriety and what his last day of drinking was like, and how he's been sober since, and gave that to the guy in prison. I don't even think Randy knows what happened to him. Yeah,
and we don't even touch on that at all. Like, there's a lot of stuff, especially in the prison aspect around sobriety and like struggling and like going through it. The gratitude list that Randy would do every day, or not every day, but whenever he wanted to. I was like, holy shit, that's not only a great thing for sober people, but just in life.
To keep yourself going. Yeah.
Just take time, look inward, and be like, what am I happy for? What am I grateful for? And make a list of the things you're grateful for.
I think it would help with all the horrible shit that's happening.
Yeah.
Like, just like what's something positive that happened? Even if it's not grateful, like what's a positive thing that happened?
Yeah. And then he also brings it up several times as well that, the music industry, and there's one part when he's in prison where he has to go get drug tested.
Yeah.
And he's like, I haven't done drugs forever, but I was just at his show, and that fucking shit is all over the place. I don't want to get a contact high. I've never heard of anybody getting a contact high.
No.
But like the point of like, you're in the industry. Like, we're a very self-inflicting wound type industry of self-medication and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not that way, but it's easy for people to see me that way. And there's others in the industry who are sober like me, and we have a meld chain that we all have together, and we write each other all the time to like give words of encouragement and talk about ourselves. So that was another thing we didn't bring up that I thought was really, really cool to see. Like, there's people, and he doesn't bring up any names whatsoever of who's in this meld group, but he came home from prison, and there's like 400 fucking emails from people. I'll be like, here's what and like they're passing gratitude lists back and forth. Like, they're all helping each other. They form their own sub community within this community type thing.
Yeah. I mean, that even happened on Headbangers Boat, and maybe other cruises have it as well. We just can only speak to that one, but there was, there's meetings every day. I don't know if it's only AA meetings or if it's just like sobriety meetings. There was like the health center this year, which was not their year one,
but it was the quiet room or something. The
quiet room, yeah, where like they had counselors there. It was also just to get away from everything and, just not be around all the people. I guess.
Like again, you're at like a festival on a boat where
it's all day, every day.
All inclusive drinks are like.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Like even for the Lamb of God band to be on a boat like that, like where you're around the drinks. Obviously, you're not supposed to bring drugs, but there are drugs on board. Like all this stuff, and it's like you're in that environment, and you still have to push through.
And that's their life.
And we don't know how this is. We've never dealt with this, so
yeah, and that's their life every day. You go to one show and it's a fan being like, "Let me buy you a drink. Here, I got a joint. I got a bump if you want one." Like, go to the next show. Hey, thank you for helping me through my struggles. Yeah, here's a bump. Like,
it is just the environment. So, but I can see where your book club buddies, friends, book club partners, what are
people?
they?
Let's just call them people.
People, your bourbon drinkers. Where they would say that maybe would have fit more at the beginning when he's talking about, his time going to local jails because of his drinking and his life before getting sober and before all this happening and all that stuff. So I can see where they're talking about it. I do think it's kind of like in a good spot in the book of like leaving this horrible place and then coming home. And I don't know, I'm not articulating that correctly, but kind of like that was a horrible day. This was a horrible time. But there's always this happiness, like there is happy to find. No,
I agree with you for sure. Again, I like remembering, and it's been almost a year since we've read this. I always thought that section was closer to when he met Daniel's family.
Okay, yeah.
And that made more sense to me to fit that in there of being like,
and it is at the
I know the
end.
pain they're going through.
Yeah. And do you know what that might, I think he might bring that up when he's talking about writing. He wrote a letter to the family, right? Or the letter he had to read during the trial or something?
So let's get into the trial a little bit and then go from there. So he goes home.
First of all, the trial is the very last little teeny tiny bit of the book.
Yeah, there's not much there for the book for sure.
Yeah.
So he goes home. He hangs out with his family. This was in the summer, by the way, because I do remember him being like, "I am in prison during the 4th of July, my favorite holiday. We're usually out grilling in the backyard, hanging out, just having a good time, listening to good music." So this is, probably August timeframe or whatnot that he comes home.
Probably, yeah.
There's in the movie, there's depictions of him coming home, the band meeting him at the airport, which is kind of funny because it seems like a very tiny ass airport, like a Des Moines airport.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of people leaving.
Airport
I think so.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of people leaving the airport, and then there's a small crowd of like, "Welcome home, Randy," and all cheering and crying. And everybody else like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?"
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're not in the metal community, you wouldn't even know who Randy is.
Yeah.
So, like, it would just be like, what the fuck? Like, what's this guy doing? Like, what happened? Did he just come home from prison or something? Like,
he did. So. But then they like prepare for trial, and then they head back to Czech Republic when the date is set.
Yep.
I think they wanted to be there. He brought his lawyer, Jeff, I think was his name, the band's lawyer.
That's the band lawyer, yeah. And
so that's the other thing.
Martin is his Czech lawyer.
Yeah, that's the other thing we talked about. Like to represent him in the Czech courts, he had to have a Czech licensed lawyer.
Right.
So they found like the best they could, which was, I think, Mark, right? You said?
Martin.
Mark Morton is in the band.
Martin.
You
said Mark, I said Martin, and you came up with Mark Morton. Mark Morton.
No, he's not a lawyer.
That was his lawyer. No, Martin was his name.
Okay, I cannot remember that.
I'm pretty sure that was his name.
I cannot remember that. There was one part early on in the book where he's driving to, when they drove him to get his glasses, and like a translator pops out and it's like this little woman, and like they get back in, that big beef sort of like hulky man was like, "She's a tiny woman, ain't she?" And Randy's like, yes, she is.
So is that the translator at his trial too?
It is. Okay. Yes.
So she's actually in. You can see her in the
documentary,
in the As the Palace Burns, and she is. I mean, she's not like a tiny person or a little person. She's just a small woman.
Yeah. But I was like, I don't ever remember her coming back up in the book, but no, she's definitely at the trial for sure.
I think I remember him mentioning the translator at the trial.
Yeah.
So.
But they're back there in the Czech Republic. They're prepping for the trial.
Yeah, I think they get like an apartment.
Yep.
That they stay at, because they do go before the trial. I mean, it's not like they fly in the night before. They're there for a couple weeks or something before the trial.
They're doing like practice cross-examinations and whatnot.
Yep. And he's preparing himself mentally to not go home for 10 years, because once he goes there, he knows.
Depending on the outcome.
Yeah. That's where I was coming. He knows that if he's found guilty, he's not coming home for 10 years, at least 10 years.
Yeah. If not more.
So, he's kind of preparing for that. And I think there is a part that he like goes to the lake when he's home or something and just like kind of ponders everything on like,
I can't remember that. No,
happen. Yeah, like basically like what can happen sort of thing.
Yeah, I can't remember that.
He doesn't want to tour during that time because he wants to spend time with his family.
Well, that was funny because as soon as he comes home, they're like, "Do you want to tour?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "I don't, but also
we need money.
We need money because you guys. Not only was I in prison, but you guys put a lot on the line. You guys being the band, a lot on the line. Like it's not just my life affected by this; it's yours and your livelihoods."
And they do the Knotfest Iowa show or the Knotfest show in Iowa. I don't know if they did any other shows.
I think in the book they talk about having a small tour booked around as well.
Okay.
And I think another part of that was like I don't know when I have to go again. Like back, so we can't do this long, year-long tour. Like I will have to go back, obviously.
Right. So anyways, so they're in the Czech Republic maybe a couple weeks or a few days before the trial in the apartment preparing.
Yep. The trial process itself
is weird.
I like it. Different. I like it a lot. So you don't have a jury.
No.
You have a panel of 3 judges.
Yeah.
And I know at the appeals court level, I don't know at what level, the Supreme Court for sure. The one below that is maybe circuit courts. I don't know. But the one below that, I don't know if the one below that, if there is one, if there is one below that or not. But those use panels.
Okay.
This used a panel of 3 judges. You have your primary judge and you have 2 other judges listening. They're the ones that listen to the evidence and they are the ones that cast the verdict.
Yeah.
Based on their understanding of the law and based on the evidence presented to them.
So you like that better than the lay person? Being on a jury.
Yeah. The normal person's a fucking dumbass loser, just like me. Like I would.
If you were on a jury.
I would not be good. Like, here's expert testimonials. Like, well, why are they experts? Like, I'm just like. I do not like the trial by jury aspect because also the thing they don't talk about is the jury is selected and they're selected to get you the outcome you want.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, there's probably like 100 people that go in and then they find 12 people who answer questions the way that they want you to answer them.
People talk about if you want to get off jury duty, like say a racial slur or something. No, if you want to get off jury duty, tell them you read books and you're educated.
Yeah,
and then they're like, get this motherfucker off the stage. Like the lawyers do not want educated people on the stand.
I get what you're saying. Okay. I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. I kind of thought of it as opposite where I'm like, well, is this really fair that like these I consider judges government officials, are they?
They are. They do are, at least here in the States, they are the judicial branch of the government.
So I'm like, these government officials are deciding this lay person's outcome and they could have a bias.
That's very true, especially in authoritarian governments, for sure.
Yeah, maybe that's where my brain is going to because, like, I don't know much about the Czech Republic government, but just how it's...
Eastern European used to be the Soviet bloc. I think
that's where I'm going from, is just, like, do they really have the best interest in this lay person?
Do they care about the person or the state?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And are they going to even listen to what the defense has, or are they only going to listen to the prosecution?
I get what you're saying for sure. I still think I would, in a perfect world, would like a panel of 3 individuals whose job it is to know the law and know how the system works.
That's true. Like if I was ever picked for jury duty, I don't know the fucking law. Like how would I know what?
We just talked about bail and how we had known nothing about bail processing.
Anyways, so we should put a little disclaimer we're not lawyers or something on this. So anyways, yes, so you meet the judges, the whole process. He does describe the prosecutor.
Yes, he does.
So I'm going to tell you my first thought of the prosecutor.
Do it.
So I thought of him as like this, okay, I'm going to say middle-aged now. I used to think old, but I guess 40s, 50s isn't that old since we're there.
But your interpretation, I'm assuming, has changed because of the movie.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So this was before we saw the footage from As the Palace Burns. So this is when I'm reading the book. I see him as like this middle-aged 50-year-old guy who's just drunk and falling asleep in court and all this stuff. Because that's how he's kind of depicted. the age isn't depicted in there. That's just the vision I have. What did you think from the book?
I never took drunk a part of that.
Okay.
I did take middle ages in his 30s to 40s or whatnot. I assumed on the early ages because in my mind, the way he pursued this case, especially in the book, the way it was depicted, and constantly fighting like, no, we can't have him get bail, and then boom, a new bail. And the way he fought for such a strict penalty for the acts that were happening. Like, you know, you tell people what happened. Like, hey, a kid got on the stage on a rock show and then fell and hit the back of his head and died because of the injuries suffered from that. Who was to blame? Oh, it's the singer. Let's go after the singer. Like, though that sort of logic and thought, and you present that to people, like most people be like, no, what the fuck are you doing? This guy, it seemed like this was a key case for him
to get higher.
For a career. Like I want to progress as a career, and this is one of those cornerstone milestone cases that could take me from a level 5 to a level 15 type, you know, lawyer or person in this city.
I don't think lawyers have levels, but
you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
A high profile case.
But there was one part where he is constantly apparently sleeping during the trial.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I assumed he had this like, I got this locked in the bag. I can just nap during this.
I took it as he was drunk, so he was falling asleep during the trial.
I could see that. He's hungover. He's like, I just can't do this.
Yeah.
Like he was out partying all night because like, I'm trying a big American rock star and I'm going, like he's going to prison. Let's buy me around, everybody. Like I guess I could see that.
Okay.
But I don't know.
But in As the Palace Burns documentary, you do actually see him because they have footage from the court case or from the inside the courtroom. And he is like probably our age. I mean, like
he's in his mid-30s for sure.
Mid-30s, early 40s.
Again, I think that was like a career-making case for him.
Yeah. And they never mention in As the Palace Burns like him sleeping or anything like that. But
there's a lot in that documentary that's sort of glossed over that this book definitely goes into a lot of detail. A little bit
more depth, yeah. So, but anyways, so that was my thought of the prosecution. The whole process is interesting where Randy actually has to get up and state his case, not like the defense talking for him.
He's like the opening statement.
Yes, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, so what is that in trial? Is it opening statements?
Opening statements,
okay, so in the U.S. courts, at least what I've seen, and the prosecution gets up, talks for an hour about what happened and what they think happened and why this person should be. Well, I don't know if they say like why they should be found guilty or if that's the closing statement. I
assume so. I think
they allude to it.
I think so. In the American system, and it doesn't always work this way, the person being charged is supposed to have innocence until proven guilty.
Yes.
Right? Like the whole thing. Like you are innocent. Yeah. The whole criminal system doesn't always do that. Whatever. It's a whole different conversation.
You're guilty until you're proven innocent.
And then it's the prosecution to say, here is why they are guilty. Here's the crime. Yeah. They present the crime and they present the reasons why.
Yeah. The prosecution has to have the burden of proof.
Yes.
Where here, and like the defense doesn't have to give basically any evidence.
That's what I kind of got from this.
So, no, I'm saying in the U.S. The defense
doesn't have to give I see what you're saying.
Like the defense doesn't even have to put on a defense. It's more like, does the jury think that they do not?
No, it just made me funny because it's like this. You can have this well-articulated person for the prosecution stand up and give this huge, beautiful speech, and then you can have the defense, nah. And like that's all they have to do. That's kind of all they have to do. Like, nah, that's not what happened. Prove it.
I have watched a trial recently where, well, I listened to it because it wasn't filmed, but it was the audio was released after. So where the prosecution gave their whole thing, the defense gave their whole opening statement, but once the prosecution rests, the defense rests. They gave no defense.
And I think that's the part, right? Like, again, we're not lawyers, but again, I think that's where the prosecution's like, again, outlining the rationale and like, here's the evidence we showed you. Here's A, B, C, D, E, and then F is dead. He caused F, and the defense just stamped it like, nah.
Okay.
I think in my head that's funny as shit to just be like,
for that to happen
to the defense is like,
No, it didn't. No,
it didn't happen.
Okay.
And just like even when you're doing cross-examination, just like walk up like, but did he?
Yeah. So, anyways, in the Czech, it seems like in Czech Republic, it seems like the defendant is the defense. So they have to get up. They have to give the opening statement. He has to cross-examine.
I thought that was
the
fun.
Witnesses, but it would not be fun if. Okay, so in this scenario, maybe.
All right.
But
again, I use fun in the wrong context.
Did. So, but I mean, in this scenario, he is cross-examining some of the friends, some of the fans, some of the uncle, I think, is the family member.
So the uncle's a family member. There's one fan he does cross-examine. You don't have to cross-examine. You have the opportunity to cross-examine. Yeah. But again, like the opening statement again isn't the prosecution or the defense. It's Randy coming up there and talking. And he talked about that in the book and in the movie of, cool, how long do I have to talk? And like, oh, at least an hour.
Yeah. And
it was kind of funny in the book, like, an hour? Are you shitting me? And in the movie they show it as well. And they brought that same part up. But yeah, I do like that aspect of you are being accused and you yourself, you have your prosecution, your defense, and you and the judges all get to ask this one person questions and clarifying questions. I
think it's horrible because if you are a victim's family of a murder, say.
Yes. Okay. I see what you're saying.
And so say I got murdered and now you as my husband have to be questioned by the person that killed me.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Wouldn't that be horrible?
Yeah, I could see that being horrible.
And these people here do have an aspect that Randy killed or had took an action that caused the death of David. So it could be seen that way too. Like, I don't want to face if you got killed, I wouldn't want to face the murderer. Like in that context, I would want to look them in the eye and be like, what the fuck was wrong with you? But I wouldn't want to have it in that context of like, you're trying to prove your innocence and you're asking me these questions. I just think it's horrible.
No, I get what you're saying now. I do. I do think it's fine and we have this in the States. I guess if.
I mean, you could self-represent yourself.
You could.
Or self-represent yourself?
Self-represent, yeah.
Yeah, self-represent. So you could be that person. There's a trial happening right now. Well, not happening right now, but it's going to be happening this year where the defendant is self-representing herself in a murder case.
I think Bundy self-represented himself, for instance.
Did he?
In Florida, yeah, he did. But like, I guess the thing is here, like with our lawyers, you have a bunch of people speaking in your ear all at once. It's like, don't say that, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Where at least here, there's an opportunity for Randy at some point to tell all of them, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to say what I want to say. I do agree with you, the aspect of I'm accused of killing your son. And here I'm going to ask you questions like, well, was your son not suicidal? Was your son not try to trigger you and try to get you emotional and whatnot.
And Randy did not do that.
Yes, he did not.
But that could happen depending on what the case
agreed.
is.
So this is definitely a failure in that system. But overall, I do like the idea of the judges being able to ask questions.
No, I think the judge too. Yeah.
Me as a person, outside of everybody talking to me, being able to ask questions. Like. There's typically, if people are telling me not to do something, it's probably a thing I shouldn't do.
There are some jurisdictions here in the United States where the jury gets to ask questions.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I think that's a great thing.
I think it's a great thing too.
Let's meld those two systems.
Because I think having the jury ask questions is really good because what if they didn't understand something? And then the jury can ask that again or like clarification questions or, like, you said this, but I didn't understand, or, whatever.
Going back to like, are you educated? Cool. Get the fuck off my jury.
Exactly.
Here, the jury's like, I didn't understand what this word meant. Oh, here's what the word means. All right, cool. How did you want it to mean in the context you were speaking? Cool. Don't treat me like a fucking idiot. Just use normal fucking speak, asshole.
Yeah. So I see where you're coming from, like kind of melding everything together.
Yeah.
I think being questioned by an accused murderer would be horrible in that case. No, I do agree with you for sure. For the for a non-victim's family or non-victim's acquaintance, oh well, like if it's an expert or whatever, like cool, they can question them all they want. I just think it's horrible to put a victim's family in that.
That's fair, and maybe
or
there's
the victim themselves
yeah.
if it's a surviving case. So,
I get what you're saying. Like a victim being like, they raped me, like, but did I do that?
Yeah,
type thing.
Exactly.
Like,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, like. That would be just horrible. Now I'm like going down that road of like, that would be horrible if you had to stand in front of the person who did this and they're trying to prove that they didn't do it and all.
No, I agree with you. No, I do agree with that aspect for sure. I think there's merits to it.
Yes, yeah.
That's all I was trying to get to.
No, that's cool.
I completely agree with what you had said, and I don't want to fight against that.
It where I'm like, it's horrible.
I think there's merits to it. I think there's issues with our system. I think there's issues with their system. I think there's a good middle ground somewhere. The main thing for me is definitely the panel of judges being the ones who lay the verdict.
Yeah.
And after, do you want to just get to the verdict, I guess, or do you want to talk more about it?
Okay, yeah. Because this is a big thing that has to do with concerts. So to bring back to the concerts, is I think now in As a Palace Burns, I think goes into it a little bit more, but also in the book we didn't say this, but during Randy's original interrogations. I'm calling them interrogations. It's kind of questioning, but it's like, I think it's before he gets to jail. But they're asking what is crowd surfing? What is stage diving? Like having to explain all that. So As a Palace Burns goes into it a lot where they're going through the motions of a concert and like explaining what crowd surfing is, what stage diving is, even Randy's actions. And he still does it to today or in concerts today. So if you go to a Lamb of God show, but it's like, like kind of, come on, give it up for yourself, like that sort of thing. And so the prosecution in this case, I think, was trying to say that he was inviting people onto the stage.
Or it could have been misinterpreted as an invitation to get on stage.
Yeah. The prosecution was saying that he was inviting people onto the stage. The defense is saying, I think when you say this, the language barrier and the actions that you're doing of like,
especially people who don't speak the language natively.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. Like the difference in the language barriers. So with all that, like it was the prosecution saying that all was the invitation to come on stage. So I think about this when I talk to, some people who don't know about a metal show and they just see it as this evil, like, crazy crowd and crazy thing. It's like, no, it's not like that. We've went into that so much on this podcast, but it's not like that. It's like you're a family, you're there to help each other, like all that stuff. So when you're like, even at the beginning, when he's trying to explain what all these things are, all these terms are to people, it's like, how do you articulate that in a way that's, well, one, he has to use an interpreter as well, but it's like you're articulating it in a way of like showing it as nonviolent, but as you're saying the words, it comes off as violent.
Yeah. Okay. A couple things there. Sorry. The first thing, you have to say in Czech. We did not mention that when he did give his opening arguments and whenever he responded or asked questions, it had to be in Czech.
Yeah.
So it had to go from him to the interpreter, and she had to speak it.
Yes. And even when the verdict,
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, even when the verdict is coming down, like the judge is talking and she's talking at the same time, and he's not understanding
like
the translation of what's happening.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we didn't say that the whole thing is he's speaking English, his interpreter is speaking Czech, and so it's like going. Like anytime somebody's talking,
and that's just their legal system, their processes. Yeah. If you're going to do this, it has to be in Czech.
Yes, exactly. It can't be in English.
Which was an interesting thing. I've never thought about having to like be in court in a different language, basically.
Well, yeah. I mean, think about anybody who's
outside of the U.S. or England
doesn't speak English, and you're in a U.S. court.
And the funny thing is, all those judges probably spoke pretty good English.
Oh,
but at the same time, it's like, nope, you need to say it. And,
Okay. Sorry.
The other thing is, we didn't talk about, and you brought this up, the sort of understanding of what a metal show is and what goes on, and even in As a Palace Burns, slam dancing. Randy calls up.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is slam dancing? And then he's like, or others call it moshing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool. I know moshing.
Yeah.
I have never heard slam dancing, you old motherfucker. Like, that's an old person term right there. But that just goes to go. Like, you don't know the terms.
Yeah.
And then, cool, you describe, oh, cool, I know what moshing is. Now tell me why that's enjoyable. Why is it enjoyable to run into a pit with a bunch of other people and be punched in the face? Oh, why is that enjoyable?
Why do people do that?
You know what? I don't like it. I can see why other people like it. Why do other people like it? Because it's what they want. But then we've talked about this too. Like, we don't like mosh pits. Like, we're not in the mosh pit.
Yeah.
But we like being on the edge of mosh pits.
I don't know if I like being in a mosh pit or not because I haven't done it yet.
Right. But I understand why people are there. I understand what they're doing. I understand why they're there. And I understand they're not there to hurt me.
Yeah.
But I'm a fan. I'm in that community.
We've been at some shows where somebody might be out to get somebody.
Maybe.
But most of the people there are not out to get you.
Yeah. But to your point of like, we're there to have fun. I understand, like, they're there to have fun. And you see it all the time in the pit. I ran super fucking hard into you. We knocked each other down and we hug afterwards. Like, man, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Explain that to your grandmother and have her understand it.
And explain that to somebody who's not speaking your language, who then has to translate it in a way that doesn't come off. And that's the part that we didn't get in the beginning, is the translator he has at the beginning. He doesn't know if she's translating everything that he's saying, because he'll say like a paragraph of words and then she'll say like a sentence.
Yeah.
And it's like,
there was that little bit for the first day of the trial. It was when he had to give his opening statement. It was a different translator than that little girl who was the eye doctor girl.
Yeah. So, so the trial happens. He doesn't go into it much in the book. So that's basically what we know of it. He does talk about going back to the apartment. They'll have like tea and then they'll like basically prep. They'll basically prep for the next day.
He does go out at night during Prague as well. He does enjoy the night air, the night walks.
But he goes out like in his sweater, like covered up, because he's like, I don't want people to know that I.
Because again, he's all over the tabloids and whatnot. So
then the verdict happens.
Yeah, I guess let's get to the verdict. Well, I guess one thing we didn't bring up, the guy who jumped on the stage a bunch during the show. We talked a little bit about that, I think, early on.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I forgot about this.
Everybody thought it was Daniel, who was the individual he had the chokehold on, Randy. But it turns out, no, that individual came forward and was like, that.
Because they had a cell phone video.
Yes.
And that's what the prosecution was trying to use as proof that Randy pushed Daniel off the stage.
Yeah. And like this
and it's like
trial,
a 2010 cell phone video, if you think about that. It's not like a video that we have today. So it's very grainy. You can find it on YouTube, but it's very grainy and everything like that. So.
And like this trial would be much different if it was done today with everybody filming.
Having a camera,
But no, this guy's like, I jumped on the stage a lot. Randy like put me in a chokehold, basically said like, don't get the fuck up here anymore. You've been up here a lot. You like, don't do this. And again, in the book, there's a lot more discussion about how those events unfolded, even to the point where Randy's shown a photo of Daniel. Like, do you remember this guy? And Randy's like, I cannot put my, like, I don't know who this person is, but I can see this person is like me. He's one of me. He's sitting in front of his guitar amps with the guitars and whatnot. He's like, I know exactly who this fucking kid is because I was that kid at that age.
I don't recognize
But I don't recognize that. And that's another thing in the movies that comes out is like, hey, it's a horrible thing that fucking happened. But like it's nobody's necessarily fault. Nobody caused this. It was not intent. And that's another thing with the trial and the charges is it was sort of you went out with the intent to hurt this person.
And that's why they were giving like the manslaughter type charge where it's like, you pushed him so you were wanting harm to happen.
Yeah. And it's like, no, I never intended somebody to die or get hurt from my actions. But then, the verdict comes in and Randy is, I don't know the right terminology here. I want to say acquitted, but I don't think that's what it is.
They don't use the term acquitted, but basically it's what's happening. Like basically they drop the charges.
Yeah. The judge does say that he is morally responsible for Daniel's death. which I kind of take a little offense to.
I do too. Yeah. I have a.
Why do you take that?
Because there's no evidence that Randy did anything to harm anyone. And that's where I take offense to it, where I think the judge is taking into account the crowd aspect of a Lamb of God metal concert, especially in 2010, and the videos that were shown and everything like that, like kind of saying like, well, a fan died at your event, so now you personally are morally responsible. I think that's horrible to put on one person or even a band as a whole. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I do think at the end, Randy says like he says this during the book as well, of like, I can't remember pushing this kid, but I can't definitively say I did not push them.
Oh, right.
Therefore,
he has no memory of this person at all.
Yeah, but therefore being like, I can't say I didn't kill them, but at the same time, I can't say I did. So because I can't say one way or the other, there's a possibility that I did.
Not kill.
Not kill, but lead to the injuries that led to their death type thing.
Right.
The morally responsible aspect, I do agree with. Like, not that Randy is morally responsible. I'm agreeing with you that putting that all on Randy, I think, is a fucking joke. All right, so the better dead, I can't remember what I was talking about, but
we're in the middle of like the morally responsible.
Yeah.
Or like that the judge said that Randy was morally responsible.
Yeah, and I guess I'm at like, sure, like the crowd was rambunctious. It wasn't proper security. You should have stopped the show. But at the same time, everybody on that stage should have stopped the show. Every member of the band was like, this was not a safe show. We should have like left. So every band member should have been like, we're done. We're not playing the show. Everybody should have had that responsibility or that power to say like, we're done. Same with the security, which was a single person, which they did bring up in the trial as well. And I think they put most of the blame on him and the venue. But the venue has been torn down since the trial and when this occurrence happened. The manager as well, like they should have had the power to say like, this is not safe for you as a band or the crowd. Like we need to stop. The venue itself should have said like, this is not safe. Every fucking road tech, the ones who were building the stage when Randy the morning of walked up and they're like, this is a shit fucking venue, should have had the power to be like, we shouldn't play. Like, we should not play here tonight. So putting all of that blame on Randy as an individual, I think is incorrect. The experience as a whole should have been, or everybody as a whole should have had the power to say, no, let's not do this. And because it happened, it's now on everybody, not just on Randy. And I guess that's where I'm sort of at with this.
Yeah, and I think I agree with everything you just said. I think you also had to put into the aspect of the fans as well as to we need to control ourselves and stop doing this shit. So, because you are saying like everybody around the performance and the band and the venue and everything should be held responsible, but it's also people have to take their own responsibility. Now, I'm not putting this on Daniel himself or any of the fans that were doing the stage dives and everything like that, but people need to take responsibility for themselves as well. So. Yeah.
And as I said at the beginning of this, like, you do not get on the stage, period. Yeah. End of like sentence. Like, no, do not ever, ever, ever get on the fucking stage. I don't give a shit. Even at these hardcore shows where it's normal, I'm still like, no, get the fuck off the stage, you stupid fucking loser. Like, in my head, that's what I'm thinking whenever I see somebody stage dive. And I get it. Gatekeeper just said it's cool to go do this. I'm like, no, Gatekeeper's wrong. They're like, that's not a cool thing to do. And they're just flat out wrong. But also to the fan aspect, I didn't even think about that of we've been to several shows where you have seen fans break up fights amongst themselves. Yeah. Fans who like will like
step in the middle of like a pit or something to be like, hey, you know, like
somebody's too drunk, let's help them up, let's get them out here to safety type thing. Like that is one thing I do really love about going to metal shows and with the metal community is we do look after each other quite a lot. Do we do it perfectly? No, we don't. We do not. Like things will like it's not going to be perfect, but we do tend to care for ourselves and each other and look after each other. So
100%.
Placing all that blame on Randy and like you are morally responsible for his death, like sure, but so is every fucking other person there.
I wonder how that actually came off in the Czech language versus the translation. If it came off that way, fuck the judge for putting that on one person or, putting that on him. But also kind of fuck the prosecution for going after charges for one person. Like, I don't know. I think this whole thing was just a spectacle of...
I do too.
I don't know when the warrant came out. I don't know if it was once they got the visa details that Randy was coming to the Czech Republic. I don't know how any of it worked. But I just think it was a show. Yeah.
And as I said earlier, I think it was the prosecution being like, this is my career-making case.
Yeah.
The documentary does not go into that morally responsible aspect of it. It's just more of you were acquitted.
Yeah.
And that's where it stops.
And if you do watch the documentary, or you can find the trial cover, that part on YouTube as well, because I actually watched it on YouTube before I watched it. After I read the book, I watched that part. But you can see in Randy's face how confused he is.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know what's like, and no fault to him. He doesn't understand Czech, and he doesn't understand the legal language of what's happening.
Because they don't say acquitted or drop charges. They use other words.
Yeah, they use some other word. And I can't even think
what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, I can't think of what the word is.
Yeah.
And I think it's Martin, his lawyer. Either Martin or Jeff has to lean over and kind of be like, you're good. You're good. Yeah, like it's over, sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's the end, I guess. He does talk about leaving the court, and it was kind of funny. On the back of the jacket, you can see the photo here of a bunch of photos. Yeah. And I was wondering if this photo was taken as he's walking out. I don't think so now.
It is. You can see it in the documentary.
Okay. So I was going to say that this looks very, not staged, but very well done. This is a great fucking photo.
You don't think that this is the actual photo he took?
Randy talked about when he left the stage, he had his camera with him, and he's
left the court, not the stage.
Yes, sorry. And there's even photos during this book, and we didn't even bring that up. Like, there's photos and there's journals of his writing. Did you read those journals at all?
I tried to read some of them. Some of them are hard to read.
It definitely made me feel good about my handwriting. His handwriting is not that
Which
great.
Is cool. I mean, whatever. Like,
you are who you are. If you can read it, good for you.
Yeah. But there's like a drawing of the cell.
Yeah.
There's the journal entries, which is... It is interesting, but you do know, I mean, I got from the beginning when he's talking about at the show, like, he is a journaler, he is a storyteller, he is like all this stuff. We didn't even touch on this, but he had to go to a mental evaluation.
Oh, yeah, we missed over that.
He makes up some stupid story just to play with it, because he's like, this is so fucking stupid that I'm here. I think everybody probably has to go through a mental evaluation.
Which is weird, prison, because they give him a picture or a story and say, write a story based on this picture. Yeah. And he knew right away of what they were trying to do. Like, this picture, if I do something dark and scary, it would be depicted of me being a dark and scary person.
Yeah.
So he did like the most upscale, like, this person won the lottery the next day and then went and did this, which then solved cancer and saved so many lives, which good on him, because
just fucking with it.
In the opposite, where I was like, how dark could we make this? And I would have made those stories as dark as humanly possible, not because I am a dark person, but because I would want to hand it off to the person and watch them like cringe. Like, why would you write this? Why would you think this? He's like, because I want to see you like ask those questions.
Yeah.
Like, I understand this is a game. Like, this means nothing, but actually it meant a lot. And yeah.
Anyways, so you know that he's into the writing, the storytelling, all that stuff. So for him to actually take journals every day probably helped him with the book, but also, I think it's a good way to live out your life. Like, I don't journal, but I think it would be good to not only write down like the stuff like this is happening, but like what you're saying, like the gratitude thing, the gratitude
lists are awesome. It's a good takeaway from this. When we do journal, it's when we go on a trip and we want to remember things. Yeah. I never look back at that, honestly.
We do when we do the episode.
We do when we do the episode, yes.
But honestly, that's why we started this whole podcast, is we wanted to remember the shows that we're going to.
Yes, yep.
So to be honest, this is kind of our journal.
Basically, this is basically the journal.
We never did this for people to listen. We never did it for anything like that. We did it for us to remember the shows.
But going back to this photo, so he does mention, like, he does do the photos, all of that. He leaves the courtroom and he's like, you know what? I've been the center of attention. All these paparazzi taking photos of me. I'm going to walk out of the courtroom taking photos of you. And when I read that, I was like, oh shit, that is what this photo on the back of the jacket is. However, when we watched the documentary, I thought he was like a big, like, badass, like, I'm going to do a bunch of photos, blah, blah, blah. When he walks out, it's like on his chest when I do photos walking down the street, like 2, 3, 4 photos, not paying attention. He's doing a photo over to his left. He's looking to his right as he does it. He's not, like, nothing's in the aperture. Like, he doesn't know what the fuck he's getting. So I'm not convinced that this back photo is taken from that moment. This could have been staged is all I'm saying.
Okay.
But it was kind of funny to be like, that's how I take photos when I don't want to, like, look like I'm taking photos. This looks like somebody who actually sat there with the camera in front of their face, like trying to fidget and getting the aperture right, the ISO right, and all of that.
So it doesn't to me. It looks like it's just as he's walking by, everything's shoved in his face, so he snaps a photo of it.
Maybe, and it could be. This could be a great photo from just like that happenstance. But I've done a bunch of photos like I saw him do in the documentary, and 99% of mine are fucking garbage.
And maybe 99%, except for this one, was for him too.
Maybe this is a great one. But yeah.
Anyways, I would recommend this book to anybody, especially if you're a metalhead, especially if you want to hear more about Randy's story for when he went through all this.
So that definitely came up during our book club as well. It's like, would you recommend this to anybody? I gave this a higher grade than everybody in our book club.
You're a metalhead, they're not.
Exactly. And that was my rationale. It was like, I'm already a fan. I'm a metalhead. I'm in this community. This means a lot to me, even though I didn't know much about the story or the background of the case other than he was arrested. I was already invested going into the book. Yeah. So I found the book highly, highly enjoyable. If I did not know that and was still a metalhead, I would still find this highly enjoyable. If I was not a metalhead or in this community, not so much. I think the long-windedness and repetitiveness of it could be cut down. I think that's where an editor would have helped a little bit to make this, that much better. The people in my book club and their arguments or their criticism around, I wanted to know more about X or Y or Z. One person was like, I want to know more about how you got into Lamb of God because this was not his first band. So, like, how did you get into the band? I want to know more about the industry. I do too. But
that's not what this book was about.
Exactly. So it's like all those things to me is more of, I am eager to read a book about that aspect of the industry.
Yeah.
Regardless to say, as a fan, highly, 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 highly recommend this book. Really good. If you don't know anything about, Lamb of God or Randy, sure, definitely check it out. If you know at least that, like, the background of this, definitely check it out. That has a lot more color to it. I found this book hugely enjoyable, even though I did find it repetitive.
Me too. I agree with everything you said. I guess I can see, like, if you're not into metal, it would, or even Lamb of God or anything like that, like, why would you want to read it? I don't, not saying that, that's the wrong way to say it, but it is kind of like having that drive to keep going, I guess, while you're reading it. Otherwise, it is kind of mundane, repetitive sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm over here reaching behind my back, not to, like, do anything, but just to, like, point out, eventually we will get to it. We have the Mark Morton book as well, a little bit thinner as well, down,
I think it's very depressing,
to 300 pages. I think this book could have been reduced down to 300 pages to the same sort of length and be just as good, if not better. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. This will be interesting. I can't wait to read this. I was going to start it, but we also have it on Audible. I don't know if I want to listen to it or read it. I like reading physical books, but for our lifestyle and like what we do, Audible is just so much easier. Not sponsored, I should say. But like to be able to like go, while I'm walking to work or something like that, reading it. So.
That's a good point, because the book club I'm in, 90% of the books I read are Audible, so I don't actually fucking read. Turns out in this book, as you'll learn with Randy, as I learned, he's not a big movie or TV person. He's a big book reader. There's not an audio version of his first book. Mark Morton, there is an audio version where he speaks and it's him reading the book, which seems super fucking interesting for me to have the person read the book.
I think that's really cool.
But I don't know.
Sorry, I want to start this one so bad.
I don't think Mark is our next book we're going to read as a group for the book club episodes for you and me. I think Corey Taylor has one that I'm super interested in.
Yep.
So that might be next.
Yeah. And then, like we said at the beginning of this episode, Randy has come out with his second book, Just Beyond the Light.
Yeah, just like this last week.
Yes. Yep. So we are going to
one of his dates. He's doing like a book tour.
A book tour, yeah.
Mark Morin did one, but didn't come to the Chicagoland area, so we couldn't go to that.
Yeah. So we will be getting a copy of that. However, with the way that we do this, since it's been a year since we read the first book, we probably won't do a episode on that for a little while.
It's gonna be a long time.
We need to get better at it. We need to use our time better.
We do, yeah. I think the Corey Taylor book's next. Will Mark be next after that? I don't know. There's so many great music books out there, and metal in particular, that I want to read. So
I have some that I want to do, like the like something about death metal, like like how death metal came about,
right?
Stuff like that,
that history aspect of it would be so cool.
Yeah. So,
anywho, this book, Dark Days, I enjoyed a lot. We both said that there's a lot in there. We didn't cover all of it. We've been talking for a long ass fucking time.
Yeah, sorry.
So hopefully this encourages you to go out and read the book if you haven't already. If you did read the book, hopefully you agreed, or just like, it doesn't matter if you agree with us. It's a book. Like, just read it, interpret it how you want. But we normally leave our episodes with, go listen to music, and hopefully we'll see you at the next show. But I guess this one's more of go read.
Go read a book.
Read a book.
But we will see you at the next show.
And hopefully we'll see you at the next show. But read.
Bye.